We'll get this city council budget workshop called to order. Just giving everybody a little bit of time to take their seats. We'll start a reverse roll call. Just really change things up. Mayor Mike Dyson.
Amber Lewis. Sarah Hudson. Amy Patillo.
Gavin Massengill.
Wayne Hadley.
All right. 1.01, presentation and discussion of the 2019-2020 fiscal year budget. Where you want to open us up with these fantastic folks?
Sure. So I think, should I just go through and identify the new things and then you
That was still on my thunder, so
what's that?
I'm gonna pitch it back to you.
Perfect.
You wanna just pitch it
I'll
here?
just pitch it to
Okay.
Councilmember Massengill.
Okay, let's kick off with the budget workshop. I think today's goal for the workshop will be for us to get through the general fund 100 and departments 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 55, and 65. So under tab 1, you'll see that budget structure overview and fund 100 is what we're going to cover. You'll go past the first orange sheet. You have an updated funds overview worksheet that is a work in progress that will become more important as we get to the end, but we're beginning to fill those numbers in as we get the budgeting, the proposed budget, base budget allocated. If you flip past the next yellow sheet, you'll see I think a new document from last time, which is our projected 2018-2019 available funds. Amber, let's pause there, and if you will walk through the available funds worksheet with us.
Sure. So what you have is all the funds, and this is base revenue and base expenditure according to 18-19 budget year. And so then there's a calculation of the over and under, and then a projection of the cash on hand that we think we'll have as of September 30th, 2019. And then after we apply the city council's policy to have a reserve fund of 25%, that's what's available, and that's in the farthest column, cash on hand after 25%. And so you see some of those, like water doesn't have enough to fund fully, it's 25%, but if you take everything and add that together, basically there are $403,000 left over after you apply the 25% policy. So you have that moving forward into the 19-20 budget year.
And did the deficit in the water fund, I know we've had some anomalies this year, is that what's going on there?
Well, luckily we have sold a lot of water in the last month, and then we haven't had as many expenses this year, unfortunately. So that's kind of what's working out for us. We're projecting that we're going to still have a dry summer through the end of the year.
And remind me, or Abel maybe, why do we project a shortfall in our debt service funds?
We haven't made the transfers.
It's those transfers that we still have coming, and
Right.
those just aren't accounted for.
Right. We budgeted those transfers, but we haven't done them.
Okay. So we should be fine on those. So
Yes.
don't worry too much about the debt service deficits that you see in Fund 14 and Fund 2012.
Right, and the deficit only comes after you apply the 25% reserve policy. So they're fully funded, they just don't have a reserve yet, but you did budget for that.
Okay, and then turning to tab 2, those are the rolling 5-year averages that we covered at our last meeting. And then past the next orange sheet is a full consolidated budget with that we'll break up when we get to tab 3. But if you wanted to see the entire consolidated budget together, that's what you're looking at there. Keep going to tab 3. And that will get us to today's activity. Yes. Starting with Fund 100, Department 10. Department 10 being administration. Amber, if you would just take us line by line hurriedly.
Sure. Actually, what might help is if you flip past the orange sheet or the yellow sheet, and then you have the budget action request, the department worksheet in front of you. It has some comments, and so I'll just try to highlight the important kind of the different numbers that you may have seen from last year's budget. So,
And as you'll recall, the department worksheet has all of the various line items with the numbers. So if you wanted to go back and see them for a year-to-date actual or a projected and budget and that sort of thing, you can go back and find that same, 50-35 for Social Security or 51-40 for telephone. You can go back and find that later if you need to cross-reference those.
exactly. So starting with 5,001 additional labor, that in the past was a budget of $2,500 to use day labor. We haven't used that in quite a while, and I don't foresee us using that next year, so we decreased that from 2,500 to 0. Item number 5,200, building inspection services. We put that to 0. We moved it to a new department called development services, which you'll see is number 15. And forensic audit, we zeroed that because it's an exceptional item. Land management IT, zeroed that because we moved that to development services. That's what is referred to as my permit now. Miscellaneous, we zeroed that and feel it's more appropriate to actually expense items where they belong rather than to a miscellaneous line item. And then municipal building improvement and planning, which was the IIP. That's an exceptional item, so we zeroed that. And then drainage fund transfer out, we zeroed that out as well, as that would be an exceptional item should the council choose to do any capital drainage projects.
And just a refresher on the zero outs, again, we're just establishing the base budget here, so it's not to say that some of these couldn't come back if someone's passionate about them, but in establishing the base budget, that's what we're going back to that baseline.
Exactly. Yes. Then we move down to the exceptional line item request. I am requesting at 3% across the board, and so you can see how that impacts administration in the amount of $2,948. And there's supporting documents for that item, as well as 1% and 2% COLA items. They're the green sheets because they affect all the funds that have personnel in them. And then the next one is an employee assistance program, and it's a program that you pay into, and the employees have an opportunity to have like 6 counseling sessions, a legal consult, a couple of other things, wellness checks, and so that's only $360 for all the employees for all year.
On that, what is the legal consult? Does it have to be work related, or is it just any?
It's anything, like
I
if
need
you
an
wanted to
attorney.
draw up a will, you could,
I need an attorney to talk to.
right. I think their parameters, I think it's maybe 4 hours or something around it, but yeah. Long-term disability, Plan 3, it's the best plan that they gave us 2 options, and so we picked the best plan. It's a total of $6,612. Short-term disability, Plan 7, again, the best plan that was offered by TML, $3,636. And then finally, a retirement payout reserve fund. Able recommended $10,000. We've been looking at people as they retire and what the impact it has on the budget. And so he thought this might be the most appropriate. We don't want to budget the entire thing this year because we're not expecting anybody to retire this year. But we at least have something in there that we could build on and start funding these retirements. Not just sick leave, but also the vacation and any other kind of leave.
You just kind of aside, you're just tucking that away.
Yes.
On the long term, talk to us about the long term and short term disability. Is that something we've never done, never offered before?
Never offered before.
And it's just a coverage policy? It's just a policy?
It's a policy for the employees. They'll be covered for long-term and short-term disability.
And are those prices estimated? We've got some vacancies here and there. Is that cost based on full employment of all departments?
Yes.
Yes.
And I will say, I was at the staff meeting when we were talking about this, and it was something highly desired by the employees, that, something that they would really value.
Do the employees automatically get it, or do you have to pay anything additional to get the disability?
No, they wouldn't have to pay. This would be 100% funded by the city.
No, cover PD also.
Yes.
Okay.
So the numbers on here are supposed to be the annual cost.
Yes.
So a 3% across the board cost of living raise is gonna cost more than $3,000.
Well, that's not just across the board. This number is how it will affect administration. It
Okay.
will show it how it'll affect development services and PD and going forward.
Okay.
The green sheet has a,
Yeah, the green sheet has an all funds
All funds.
cost. It's $39,838.
I'm looking to go in.
Yes.
which is
Yes.
a good segue. Move on to the grid sheets. So
Right.
talk to us about your exceptional item request affecting all departments.
Sure, so, the EAP, the long-term disability, and the short-term disability would all be reflected under the 5020 line item health insurance. And, the total cost for those is $10,680 annually. And you can see, up above, it identifies the 3 funds it would affect, and then the departments it would affect. And it would be, all employees have a percentage they are charged to each fund, except for police officers, they're just employees. But, we would charge these costs proportionately to what we're allocated now.
And also last year, we increased the retirement contribution for the city. And all
You-
that's baked into the current numbers.
Correct. You increased the retirement coverage from 6 to 7%, and then you also went from 25 to 20. So that was significant.
Okay, talk to us about 321 COLAs.
321 COLA 3 is going to cost $39,838. It's about $13,000 for each percent. 2% COLA is $26,559, and 1% COLA is $13,279.
And Amber is requesting a 3% COLA across the board for everyone, but I had her also give us options at a 2% and a 1%, just for decision-making purposes, in case we decided to go a different direction or not go any direction at all. So you have a sense of how much each percentage costs. And that also takes into account all benefit increases. That's an all-in cost.
Social Security and Tamarack.
So all of these are all in.
Yes, sir.
All right. And if you'll turn past the next yellow sheet, we go to the next blue sheet. Amber, tell us the difference between the blue and green sheet.
So green sheet is all department, those are the exceptional items that will impact all the departments. And then the blue sheet is the exceptional items that will only impact this particular department. And so this one in front of you is the retirement payout reserve fund.
So we would house that savings account, for lack of a better term, in administration.
Right.
But this would cover all employees, not just those that are
Right. Right.
charged with administration. Okay.
Okay, if you'll turn to the next tab, Department 15, Development Services. This is one of our, say, new department. Tell us about that.
It's a new department, so we, in the past, I think we had just had building inspection services, and, we had one line item for everything that we were paying out for that, and so now this reflects, we have salary, we have My Permit Now, training, health insurance, et cetera.
We view this as important too, as we try to get a better grip on this piece of our business. And if we ever bring it in-house, it's going to be far easier for us to determine what needs to happen for budgeting purposes if we have it in its own standing department, as opposed to a single line item.
Right.
Because there was no way to tell before what was in it and what was getting charged out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because you can see if you go to the bottom, 5,200 building inspection services, that's the line item where we had paid everything to PDG out of. And so Abel and I kind of just did our best guess of what that number was, and we broke it out between building inspections, zoning review, which would be our city ordinances, and then building review, which would be building plan review, and then arborist review. The arborist is probably a little high, but we'll see how that shakes out.
So we're going to be flying blind a little bit on this year.
Yeah.
We're just going to have to kind of make it work until we can dial it in next time.
Right.
So do the drainage reviews go someplace else?
They do.
They do. Yeah, not a lot to talk about here since it's Aussie Rose to the left. We can kind of roll the dice and see how it goes. All right, moving on to Department 20, sanitation. And we had, well, you can see, yeah, these are all the department worksheets. So then going on to the next tab, Department 20, sanitation. Jackie, Bob doing this one, or are you doing this one?
I'll take it.
It's pretty short.
Yes. Basically, we just have $1,000 in there for spring cleanup, and then $125,000 for garbage collection, and that reflects what's in the contract that we expect them to go up to next year. And so that's everything in that fund for that department.
Yeah, and if you look at the consolidated budget, you'll see that we were actually under this number, but I think the contract accounts for an escalator, right?
Yes,
And that is.
they finally woke up to it.
So. All right. Department 30 is the next tab for streets. Jackie Bob.
What do you want me to do? I'm good with it.
Does he have a worksheet?
He
Yes, sir.
does.
Certainly do.
Just kind of walk us through if you would.
All right. Salaries, $34,357. That's actual currently going. Health insurance, $4,066 actual. 50/30 workers' comp, $650 actual. Social Security, Medicare, $2,589. 50/40 unemployment, 79. 50/50 Texas Municipal Retirement System, $4,115. 51/30 utilities, nothing.
All right, stop there. We zeroed this one out because, for whatever reason, we continued to not get charged for streetlights. Feel like, I don't know, there's some theories on that. I think they have not charged us in how long?
I would say at least 2 years.
About 2 years, so we're gonna roll the dice.
It wasn't that much anyway to start off.
Well, yeah, it's not huge, even if we start getting billed for it, it's a few thousand, so we're gonna go ahead and save it. All right, keep going, Jackie Bob.
5140 telephone, 2,000. 5145 uniforms and accessories, 400. 5161 tree trimming services, 1,500.
On this one, on tree trimming, talk to us about that one, Amber.
I think that's something, we always have in there, just in case we need to get a contractor over to
To do a larger
trim an
amount.
emergency tree or something, because, I mean, this amount wouldn't cover us trimming street trees
No.
all over the city, but I think it's kind of an emergency placeholder.
Like when the tree dropped in the street. too.
Right, we were able to call someone and pay it.
Okay.
5180 signs and barricades, 2,000. 5181 equipment rental, 1,000. 5190 materials, 1,000. 5195 vehicle operations, 2,000.
And stop there. So a reminder for everyone, 5195 vehicle operations is Abel's code for gas. So, all right,
Operating the vehicle.
yeah, keep going.
5196 vehicle maintenance and repairs, 500. 5255 vehicle insurance, 600. 5270 engineering service, 0.
And remind me why we zeroed the engineering services out.
We don't expect to have any engineering costs on streets
No,
this
sure.
year.
Striping is done.
And it was significant last time. That was a big savings.
Mm-hmm.
Remind us, what is the paying agent fees?
It's the fee we have to pay every time we make a debt service payment.
That's right. I always forget that, don't I? I ask you that every time. Okay, keep going.
5350 tools and equipment repairs, 400. 5355 street maintenance and repairs. Then 5491 traffic infrastructure.
Do you have the most recent? Did you print the ones I sent you today, Jamie?
Do what?
Did we not
Print
need
the
to
ones I
budget
sent?
anything for the parks?
I'll go
fund?
through the rest.
Bike lanes? Because I know that we just painted them, but is there like M&O that we need a budget in here for maintaining it?
Good question.
We could, we just zeroed it because it's an exceptional item.
Because I know some of them are starting to get lighter, like and harder to
I
see,
noticed
so you
that.
have to, I'm not sure how often do you have to repaint those?
Depends on what type of paint you put down, how much traffic you have on it.
For what we have now, what do you think? Because
Some of the original on the side streets and stuff is paint. It's not the plastic. We haven't put plastic down until the last 2 or 3 years. The rest of it's been paint with the glass beads in it.
So the ones that we have now that are getting light, do you think we should budget something to put plastic down on those?
Yeah, but for longevity, it's gonna be more costly.
Okay, maybe we can look at putting a number in that one. 'Cause
So wait, we're talking about that we put down plastic on the bike lanes or at the stop signs?
I think it's the material you use to spray the paint, is that?
Yeah, it's a plastic, they heated this stuff, they had to have it real hot for the bicycle lines. It's a polyethylene poly plastic, is what they sprayed down.
Which is different than just regular paint that they
Yes,
used in the
different from
past.
regular paint.
I didn't know
For the
that,
bike lanes.
yeah, for the bike lanes.
Do you want to bring that exceptional? I think that's a good idea. Do you
Yeah,
want to
I'll
bring-
add that
Okay.
to my list.
And I guess we should charge that to 5494 street striping.
Start to say, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
5479 should probably go away.
Yeah, would you
since
make a
it's
note
funded
to,
by RCDC.
would
Yes,
you make a note to delete 5479?
I will.
And if you'll bring the exceptional out of
Uh-huh.
5494.
Can I work with you on that, Jackie Bob?
Excuse me?
Can I work with you on that exceptional
Yes,
item?
ma'am.
You can help me get a idea of what we need to put for that. Thank you.
And along the same lines, I mean, we're done with street striping, right?
They are coming back to finish up. They had a couple of spots they missed, and they're coming back tomorrow to finish up. But yes, the phases, we're done. We did 2 and 3.
Okay. And the last one, 5491, is traffic infrastructure. That's sort of a placeholder. I think that was about what we used last time, so there's no definitive plan for
On 5204, do we need to appropriate the amount for that we think we're gonna need for the upcoming cycle?
That we need for what?
For 5204, for legal services?
Yeah, we thought that would, A, we didn't know what the budget, and B, it was just an exceptional item to take it back down to the base, so open to that if you wanna give some thought to what that would be.
Yeah, I need to think about it a little bit.
Okay.
I'll have something for next time.
Okay, I think that is Department 30. I'm gonna go to Department 40, Police Department. Crystal, will work us through the highlights, some explanation on your worksheet.
No problem. So some of the ones that I've asked for changes to be done to, one is gonna be training. We'd like to increase it to $7,000, especially with the new officers coming on board. And the new chief, there's gonna need to be some mandatory training that's also going to incur because of that.
We realized we're about half down of our fully
Right.
staffed department, so we kind of just budgeted, doubled the budget for things like that.
Correct. And everything else is actual, except for police qualifications, we asked to increase it an additional $500. That's due to having to purchase just new taser cartridges and different things like that. Which, like I said, that's just kind of a small increase. The bike maintenance, we decreased it. We have not used historically the $500, so we decreased that by half. The sieges, we decreased that by $20,000. We have our sieges in place. So what we're paying for now is just for them to keep us up to date.
And that, I'll pause there, that was a big savings. You all may remember last time, there were kind of two big expenditures for CJIS compliance last time. And I think we actually ended up over budgeting from what was actually
Right.
needed.
Right.
I think there was some consolidated costs in those numbers that we were seeing last time that we didn't fully recognize
Correct.
until we got into it.
Right.
So that's where a lot of that savings comes from.
And police supplies, it's part of this and also includes some of my exceptional items that I requested, but it's gonna be for tasers. I'm requesting 3 additional tasers on that aspect. On uniforms, again, because we are coming in with having to outfit at minimum 3 additional new officers, that's going to increase the uniform cost and vest.
And it's those accessories that, as I recall, that's what gets us, right? It's not the because when I see uniform 10,000, I think.
Right, but I mean,
You
it's
know what
the
I'm
vest,
talking
and I mean, everything else it's mainly the vest that
The
that
accoutrement.
pretty much hits us.
Life-saving vest.
That's it. And vehicle operations, we did decrease that. What that is obviously the cost of gas has not been, because I think the year prior we were in the 3 to 4, close to 4. Here we've been in the 2, so we're kind of hoping it stays
Crystal?
that way.
Let's revisit 5157. records
5157. Oh, excuse me, records management. So we do have $40,000 allocated for our new RMS system. I did double check for the grant yesterday. We should know by next week. It says that it is going into the final stages. We're not showing to be unfunded, so that's a plus. So we're hoping that will go through, and then that will free up that $40,000. So, yes, thank you, sorry I missed that. That's a huge one too. So, so keep your fingers crossed. Hopefully we'll know something by next week. Everything as far as radio services and that's the actual amount that we received from Travis County. The emergency notification system, we decreased it on our end for the 2400, but that went to administration. That's going to be the new SWIFT 911. Dispatch services, that's gonna be the actual, they did go up this year to 19.7. The drug testing, we increased that from the $100 because we need to do, for a lot of the new guys, new psychologicals. So, we increased that due to that. Recruiting services, we decreased that by 20,000 because we are hoping we will not need recruiting services, this year. So, we'll keep that, like I said, we'll keep that at decrease. Everything else stays at current level, and then I go into, my exceptional.
All right, talk to us about your exceptional wise.
So what we asked for this year was a new vehicle, and our newest vehicle is a 2016 Chevy Tahoe, and our oldest vehicle is a 2012. We just dropped another $800 due to our oldest vehicle overheating. We've got to help alleviate some of this fleet of the constant running. We're asking for a truck. The number's gonna look bigger to you this year because unfortunately the number that was given last year was not a fully outfitted vehicle. It did not include the new radio and everything. And so the 75,000 reflects those numbers. So that's why it's gonna be the new vehicle and the outfitting. And what we're asking for is the truck to also help carry barricades, whether it's for the 5K flooding or anything else that we need around the city, but we also can provide help to Jackie Bob to get that kind of taken care of. Or if the officer is here by himself, he can handle that by jumping into that unit.
So do you actually, out of curiosity, do you get a K-cab pickup truck?
Yes, it has a cage. So it's a
Okay.
full patrol vehicle.
Okay.
So it has a cage if you have to arrest anybody.
Okay.
Yes, yeah, it's fully, you can use on patrol. The next one is gonna be for radios. We need to replace 3 of our handheld units. To kind of put it into perspective, I just downed my unit that I had since I started here 14 years ago. It was, I was at the 5K and I was unable to get out, and it was time to down that unit, and so that's how long we've had some units in place, and those have got to be cycled out. And that's what this does, this just provides that for us to be current in our radios and not have that issue.
You have one of the radios on you?
I have a new one, yes,
On you?
on me.
May I see this gold-plated radio?
Yes. See?
That's
And
awesome.
see that, that's my if I'm in trouble button, and they'll know where I'm at.
Good. I've never seen $7,000 radio.
Unfortunately. I'll let you hold it if you'd like.
I do. Cradle it.
That's it.
Spend a little time with it.
Well, that's why we held on to them for 14 years,
Oh,
right? So, the taser one, that's to replace 3 of our taser units. Again, just like modern technology, they put new units out, so therefore they don't repair old units, don't provide parts for old units and different things. So it's just keeping up with, keeping everything up to date. As far as stipends, and now I included this all on one, but I'll go through each stipend. So one thing that I want to work on this year is retention. I mean, whatever, and become more marketable and provide things for people to want to stay here, and also things for them to possibly work towards, like field training officer. And eventually we'll just include more and more stipends. But these, with the exception of the on-call pay, fall in line with other agencies. So what I'm asking is for a nighttime differential, and because we have what we call a mid-shift that runs from 2 p.m. to 2 a.m., I felt it was only right too that he also receive some type of nighttime stipend. So the way it runs, it's going to be $100 a month for that mid and $150 for that nighttime guy, which that'll be a total of $6,000 overall for the year. for the field training officer, it's gonna be $150 a month while he is activated and training. So a training usually runs 3 to 6 months, depending on, so that's why, I mean, we guesstimated that it was gonna be, so 2 FTOs are activated at the same time for that one person. So the way that runs is they will both be receiving it for the same amount of time that that person is in training. And we're hoping that we only have to do 2 to 3 people, and that's it for this coming year. So that's what that stipend is, for a total of $1,800. On-call pay, this is temporary. We're hoping, this is while we are currently in the situation that we're in now, where we're having officers that are on call every night. And the way that goes, I mean, obviously, they're off their shift, but they can't go home and have that drink with their family or go on vacation or do whatever it is that they would like to do. So that's why we felt that. So the way it would be is it was $40 every time they're on call. That equals to about a time and a half for 1 hour. If they receive a call where that $40 washes and they go on to time and a half, is the way it is. So that, for the $40 a month, is approximately $960. $40 a shift per that officer is $960 for the month. So, which equals, I'm on call every Friday night, so this includes just those 6 other shifts that other people are on call, and that's where that total is coming from. We're hoping that this will only go on for less than 6 months until we can become hopefully fully staffed. We do have 2 people that are going to OR board next week. The unfortunate part is they do not have their certification. They do have their certification, but they aren't ready to be on the streets. They're just coming out of the academy. So they just require a little bit extra, but that's okay. I mean, as long as we're getting people, we're getting people in. So until those people hit the streets, we'll still be at this. And not only that, but once the new chief comes in, I'm hoping too that'll help eliminate some of this on-call stuff, and I can move into different areas as well. So there's that. The computer, I'm asking for, so I've been working on the new chief's computer. What it is a laptop that was purchased in October of 2014 that is used also as his desktop. It's very slow, it has issues, so what I would like is to purchase a new desktop and laptop for the incoming chief, and we budgeted that at $2,000. And last is $5,000 for what we considered community outreach. What this is just to kind of help Bowie facilitate some type of community outreach or rebranding. We put out for a town hall meeting. We had you were there, Sarah, I think 3 residents that showed up. So we're trying to find some different avenues to get more of that community involvement. And so what we're asking for is $5,000 to hopefully help for Bowie to give us those different avenues. So, any questions on my budget?
Out of curiosity, are these in priority order in your opinion, or?
Priority, the vehicle, yes. I would really, honestly, would put stipends before tasers, and the laptop and the computer. He's got to have a better computer to work on. So.
This was the word we talked about it when
Yeah.
we got together and met about items to move the budget. But I'm glad you asked that question because I didn't ask it before.
Any questions?
I wanted to clarify the on-call pay.
Yes.
So you said this is the total for the other officers who are on call.
Correct.
There's nothing in here for you being on call?
No. I'm salaried, and honestly, my biggest thing is that I want to provide them whatever relief that they can possibly receive. I'm 100% okay with not receiving pay for on-call. They are taking the on-call for those 6 other days. So if that's what this takes for me to be able to push that through, that's what we'll do.
We can bump that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next tab, Department 50 courts. Should go quickly.
I think you'll see that the salary is different than last time. Last year at this time, we didn't have that position filled, and we weren't sure who was going to fill it. So it was a full 2,080 hour a year position that we funded. So this is going to reflect the actual of her working 3 days a week. And then the miscellaneous line item, again, we just want to expense to the correct line items. So that's really all the highlights for court.
Okay, let's move on then to Department 55 parks. Marina, I think, is here.
All right. I'll just move down item by item. First one, 5,000 salary. This represents the city personnel that assists the park, and we did spend some time on this, Amber and Abel and I, to make sure that we weren't overpaying or underpaying the costs that the park incurs through city personnel. So it equates to Amber and Jackie Bob's time 5% of their salaries, city secretary 10%. Am I missing anybody?
Able 10%.
Able 10%, that was the other, yes.
But no other,
No other
Public works
public
staff?
works, no, since hiring Cleanscapes. All right, then moving down items 50/20, 50/30, 50/35, 50/40, and 50/50, then are our percentage corresponding to those salaries. Printing and reproduction, 500. We typically spend less than 100, but we're recommended to keep the current level. Utilities, that's for the pavilion electricity, and that runs about $240 a year, and that's typically what we pay, but it was recommended we keep that current level. Tree trimming services, this current year we had budgeted $6,000, but have not spent any of that, nor do we anticipate doing so. And in visiting with Amber, we thought it, not anticipating anything that the park would be responsible for.
And the
next
city
year.
just undertook, not this last fiscal year, but the prior one, an extensive tree trimming project in the park, and so I don't feel that it's necessary.
And doesn't our contractor, they
Yes,
kind
that's
of
a
get
good
money?
point.
Yes,
Mhm.
Cleanscapes does do pruning kind of stuff, that
Maintenance.
thing, yes.
But they don't do anything here at City Hall, do they? Because the trees are all over the roof here.
They have just started out here in the Waterwise Garden. They just started working out here, so I could talk to them if we have some trees that we needed trimmed. But Cleanscapes just trimmed like over that, in that park area, upper part.
I guess, excuse me, to Bob's concern, it's more of the branches and limbs that may be damaging the roof.
Yeah, they're wearing all the wearing.
Are there some that we need to?
Oh, yeah, there's a bunch. I noticed it when I walked in tonight.
Okay. Jackie Bob and I can get together and talk about.
5158 office supplies, again, this, we usually spend less than 100, but much less than 100, but we'll keep it at that current level. Equipment maintenance and repairs, 5164, 1,000. This represents our percentage of public works equipment that we do utilize. Materials, that's in support of existing assets, as is 5190, as is 5191. Maintenance, 2,500. We have not spent beyond these levels the last several years, so we're keeping it at current level. In review of the city personnel that we do use, 5195, the vehicle fuels was zeroed out, as was 5196, vehicle maintenance and repair. 5198, field house supplies and maintenance. We typically budget this $1,000, but I don't know that we spent much of any of this last year. However, I do think we need to maintain this level and spend more of this on maintaining the bathrooms when fall season, it's not fall season. So request that we keep that at current level. 2555, again, anything related to public works vehicles, that was zeroed out. 5,300 is our share of administrative and city personnel computer software support. We visited, we really tried to clean this up and make sure that any expense in here is tied to the park, and if so, are we appropriately paying our share for it? And we decided to move the Zilker Clubhouse, that annual 4th of July rental fee, to administration. So that's going to be removed from the park budget. Then moving to 5391, Park Master Plan. That's an exception request. On this exception request, we're estimating consultation fees for Nudge Design regarding existing park assets, as well as possible future improvements and/or park projects for submission to the city bond package. Examples of that would be trail extension with ADA connectivity between the upper and lower park, and perhaps a dedicated dog park. Need to have this in there for the possibility. We don't anticipate more than $3,000 because quite a bit has incurred this fiscal year, so I think this would be more than appropriate. Landscaping and lighting, 5427. This is the contract amount with Cleanscapes, and the Park Commission has been very pleased with Cleanscapes' performance. We were concerned that this contract price might increase with the elimination of their use of Roundup, but Amber consulted with them and they assured us that it would remain the same for the next year. So I think that has been a game changer for them. They now have personnel, weeding rather than one person spraying. So we appreciate that, and we need to share that with them. Next, 5449, Community Education Garden. Did some research on this because this has always kind of perplexed me. It is a pass-through of expenses. They have an account with funds. When they have expenses, they submit it to ABLE. It runs through that and is paid, which is why we have to have an income and corresponding expense. If you look at this year's budget, it appears that the garden costs the Park Commission $900 a year, but that is not accurate. They fund their own costs. Next, 5455, improvements to existing park assets exception request. I think we don't have anything for that at this point. I think the new philosophy and mantra of the new dynamics of the park commission are that we need to get our house in order. We need to find out what we need to do to maintain our current assets, and what is that gonna cost, and how are we gonna pay for that? So before we look at doing any significant improvements or new projects, we need to figure that out moving forward. So that's where the focus. Buck has participated in quite a few of these meetings, so do you think that's an accurate
That's very
reflection?
accurate.
Okay, all right. All right, so, 5456, plans for walking trail. Also, did I miss one? No, I'm out of order. Okay, this might be a little bit of discussion. It was approved in this budget to participate at the mayor's 2017 request to participate in the mayor's Monarch Pledge. And so we had gotten bids on doing butterfly habitat planting in the upper beds to comply with that and to support that. Unfortunately, the contractor was not able to meet the spring planting deadline, and so at this point we feel it is too late to take place this year. So I think it provides us a good opportunity to review the park site conditions and maintenance requirements to ensure that it's a successful project going in and can be maintained for years to come. So actually it was fortuitous that it didn't happen, because I think we really need to relook at this. However, we do feel like we've been, this is part of our mission from the mayor from 2017 to look into this. If there has been a change in the dynamics here, I think we need that feedback as well. So if we still have the green light to pursue this, and we can resolve all these potential issues, then I would request $6,000 for next year's budget to do so. So that was plans for what? Grant writer, 5496. Again, we don't have any major projects on the horizon right now, but if we do, if an opportunity presents itself for a grant that we feel like we would have the possibility to be awarded, I think it prudent to have the amount in here to pay for a grant writer for one grant application for next year. Next item, 5497, plant consultant. Nothing requested for this. In fact, we talked about maybe even removing this for now. This was originally in there when we were considering removing invasive species, but I don't see that on the horizon anytime in the near future. 5498, RCDC park drainage. We discussed that, and that's probably a citywide issue and perhaps to be addressed in the bond package. So again, no request there. The only new line item we are requesting has not obviously been numbered yet. Playscape mulch. This would be separate and apart from bed mulch, which is under maintenance. So the 3 playgrounds have mulch fall zones for safety. The 2 lower playgrounds and the upper playground, and the mulch is wood chip. And it needs to have a minimum of 6 inches of depth for safety. And I went by recently and tried to determine the depth, and I think it's become so compact that we're not at the 6 inches everywhere. So this needs to be addressed, and this needs to be a priority. I think having it as a separate line item, because it is significant enough in cost to keep an eye on it and to remind us that this needs to be done and maintained regularly. We're still waiting on some bids, but we have a feel that 5,000 is probably somewhere in the,
It's a good starting point.
is a good starting point. All right,
Great,
questions?
great job. Any
All
questions?
that work.
I do want to say thank you very much.
Yes,
For the
thank you.
thoughtfulness, and the obvious effort that the park commission has done, to put in this budgeting. The other thing I do want to point out with regard to the Monarchs, pledge, that was with, Roxanne, as mayor, and
Is that through Tom?
with Tom. Yeah, it's very, I think it was reaffirmed in 17. In any case, I guess my point there being, council, that most of us were on council when we approved this, and point to the park, I guess my point to the park commission is, I won't speak on behalf of council, but I know that as council, most of the folks on this dais supported it for good reason before us.
Okay, great, thank you. All right.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least, let's move on to the next tab, Department 65, Public Works. Amber?
Sure. Public Works does not have any personnel costs allocated to this department, so there's really not much in Public Works other than building maintenance, animal control, and disposal. So this is similar to what you would have seen last year, and there are no exceptional items requested for this department.
And look at that, we made it through the whole fund.
So if we don't have staff on this, why do we have drug testing?
If we don't have any personnel, who are we drug testing?
Great point.
It probably shouldn't be.
Yeah, Amber, we zero that out. Good catch. Always skip over those $100. So what I'd like to do next time, I think we will go through, Amber and I have talked about this, but I think maybe what I'd like to do next time is briefly go through and adopt exceptional items for Fund 100 next time. So, like, I know you're gonna bring a new one, you may bring one. Let's go through and try to adopt those for Fund 100, and then we'll try to get through the rest of the funds. Fund 200, 301, 310, 320, 330, and the debt service funds, drainage fund, wastewater fund. We'll try to get through the rest of the funds next time, in addition to adopting exceptional items for Fund 100. Those, if you'll recall, those remaining funds go pretty quickly because it's a lot of times money in, money out. Fund 100 is where all action is.
Just to clarify, does that mean that we're adopting one of the COLAs next time, or does that come later on?
We can do that later on.
Okay.
Let's discuss it, and anything past that's just specific to Fund 100, we'll try to adopt those next time.
Okay.
So we can get all those rolled in for the meeting after that. Does that work? That's all I've got.
Right. No other comments on that, council. Sincere thank you to Gavin, Abel, and Amber. We're going to close the budget workshop at 7:06, 7, something like that. And we will go ahead and roll right into our regular city council meeting. 3.01, roll call, please. We can start with you, Wendy.
Wendy Handley?
Gavin Massengill.
Buck Shapiro.
Jenny Flood.
Sarah Hudson,
Andrew Lewis.
Mike Dyson. 4.01, citizen comments.
Very hot one.
Public comments. Oh, okay, chief,
Rex.
we got you. In a different picture.
Yes. So, first and foremost, I'd like to thank anybody who came to our National Night Out and went through that hot event. We appreciate your support. And while I was there at National Night Out, I had a conversation with Mr. Josh McKay, and he actually has donated money to provide us rifle-resistant vests. They're rifle rated. So basically what this does is it provides our officers a opportunity to be protected the entire time. So a rifle rated vest, normally and historically what they would do is they'd put them in the trunk of their car. There's a lot of times either A, you can't get to it, or B, so if you are able to get to it, there's lag time, right? That you have to go to your truck, put it on, do everything else. Or you can't get to it and now you have gone into a firefight with minimal protection. This provides us a daily wear. It's called Angel Armor. It is a daily wear that our officers will be custom fitted. They are flying down here to custom fit us. They will be here tomorrow. And so our entire department plus our new incoming chief will be outfitted with this vest. So on behalf of the Rolling Woods Police Department, for you, Josh, we appreciate everything that you have done for us and supported us and provided this opportunity for our officers to be able to have a chance to go home to their family.
And Josh, didn't he buy something last year? Too?
Yes, he bought my.
I think we may need to add him to the revenue section. For PD.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Josh.
So, thank you.
Any other citizen comments for anything not on the agenda? Nobody signed up. We'll open 5.01 public hearing to amend the city's zoning regulations related to the obligations of the city of Rollingwood to provide reasonable accommodations under the Federal Fair Housing Act and the Americans with Disabilities Act, including but not limited to an amendment regarding the maximum number of occupants allowed in a residential dwelling. We will open the public hearing at 7:12, and we have Michael Scheinberg here to speak. Would you mind saying your name and your address? Sure. Thank you.
Michael Scheinberg, 104 Riley Road. And I went to planning and zoning when this discussion was up. And I don't know if they give a report to the city council, but there was discussion whether to limit the total number of occupants and also to get rid of the restriction on the number of unrelated people that can live in a house. I don't know how many of you were around when the city of Rollingwood threatened me with $2,000 a day fine unless I married the woman that I was living with. And she thought that was very romantic, but I think the number of unrelated, because I would have exceeded the number of unrelated people living in the house. So I think if you're going to keep that restriction, I would like to suggest that you loosen it up a little bit. Everybody at planning and zoning seemed to think that you were allowed to have 3 unrelated people in the house. You can't. You can only have 2. 3 is forbidden. And I would also, one way of loosening it up, which doesn't change the character of the neighborhood, is to not count the owner-occupier of the house, because, I mean, you know, the ordinance was originally passed because of 404 Riley Road that had a whole bunch of rooms in it and a bunch of people living in it, and it was not, the owner wasn't living in it. So anyway, just two unrelated people, including the owner, I think is unduly restrictive. So I just like to urge the council, look at what problem you're trying to solve, and then do the minimum restriction on the way people live based on solving that problem. That's my comment.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Is there anybody else who would like to speak on this item? Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing then at 7:14. And we will call 5.04, discussion of possible action resulting from the public hearing. Charlie, can I put you on the spot and ask you to give council a little bit of a recap from the planning and zoning?
Sure, it was a very good discussion. My firm brought an ordinance to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their review recommendation, public hearing to y'all that was a little bit different. It struck out, as mentioned in the report by the P&Z chair, it struck out the provision in the ordinance that currently prohibits more than two people who are unrelated from living in a residential dwelling. And then gave a variety of different ways as to calculate the number of people who may live in a residential dwelling, regardless of whether or not they are related. The purpose for that is that ordinance, as we drafted it and brought forward to P&Z, was based on some DOJ consent agreements and case law that fully supported that approach as falling within the exception under the Fair Housing Act with regards to requiring a reasonable accommodation. The P&Z had a very good discussion. It was a lengthy and very productive discussion, in my opinion, regarding the restriction on two or more than two people unrelated living in a home. Felt like they wanted to maintain that restriction, yet also include a maximum number of even unrelated people who may live in a home. Therefore, creating an exception that would also, I believe, could be defended as falling within the exception of the fair housing, federal fair housing. And that's what you have before you now, is that amended ordinance based on their recommendations. I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Yes, thank you, Charlie.
And I don't know if you need me to go through what the actual ordinance actually does. I'm happy to do that. I'm assuming.
Charlie, I have no doubt that everyone's reviewed this, but if you wouldn't mind, just for our public, giving some of the, letting us know how the follow works.
Sure. So we made some minor tweaks to it to ensure we had definitions that matched up with what we're attempting to do in the ordinance. But essentially,
Council, in your packet, sorry, it's the version .07.
No, I'm sorry, that's right. You have two in there.
Right.
So it's version 06 was the original one that was at P&Z, and version 07 is the one that actually came out as a recommendation.
For future reference, if you could put the version numbers on here, because I printed one out today. I don't know what the difference is between the one that I printed out and marked up last night.
I can see if it's the correct. Oh, you won't know the difference. But,
Right.
yeah, okay.
So it just
Yes, ma'am, we can do
hard,
that.
hard to tell.
Absolutely, we'll make sure that we put that delineation on the ordinances, and then we can take it off when it's finalized. So if you, as you go down the ordinance, you'll see under section 1402.051 definitions, we made some tweaks there with respect to definitions so that it fits what we're accomplishing to do. We strike the definition of family as that is not relevant to the way that we are attempting to regulate how many people may be in a dwelling now. We continue through some minor tweaks just for consistency. Continue to strike out references to family as it relates to the ordinance. you get down to section D, under that 14.202 permitted uses, restrictions on dwellings. Section D, that's where the major changes occurred. This section says essentially, the number of residents in a dwelling, regardless of relationship by blood, marriage, or adoption, may not exceed the lowest number of residents derived from the following, with any resulting fraction for the number of residents being rounded down. So the first calculation would be the total gross square footage of air-conditioned space in the dwelling divided by 300 square feet. That will come up with a number. The second is the number of areas in the dwelling intended as sleeping quarters multiplied by 2. That would also come up with a number. And then the final is a maximum of 10. So going through that process, the lowest number out of all of those would be the maximum allowed in a particular dwelling unit. And as mentioned, we still maintain the prohibition found in your code that prohibits any more than 2 people unrelated to each other by blood, marriage, or adoption from living in the dwelling unit. So that's in your current ordinance. So it's not struck, but it would be in section 14.02.202. And it is under section B2. In the original ordinance that was stricken, but the planning and zoning is recommending that remain in place. So essentially, if somebody came in for a reasonable accommodation, our position would be the maximum number of related people who may live in a home is 10. So that's the maximum number of people of unrelated who would request a reasonable accommodation could be in a home. Does that make sense?
Say that.
Yeah. So under normal circumstances, if somebody came in and they had a dwelling, but they didn't need a reasonable accommodation, the maximum people who could be in there would be no more than 2 who were unrelated. Then if someone came in and said, we are entitled to a reasonable accommodation, our position will be that you're not entitled to a reasonable accommodation. We fall under the exception under the Federal Fair Housing Act, because even if people are related, the maximum number of people who can be in the home is 10 for this, or as calculated by these calculations placed in the ordinance. So we would be treating folks who necessitate a reasonable accommodation and folks who are also a family exactly the same. So under this, even if everybody's related, you could still have no more than 10 people living in a dwelling. And that's the exception that falls under the federal statute that then no longer necessitates a reasonable accommodation under the law. Rather than an ad hoc, case-by-case, find-it-out kind of basis, which is where we were previously.
Council, you also have a memo provided to our Bike Workshop that summarizes the meetings and what he believes the sentiment was from the public generally.
And I didn't mention this previously, but this was actually 2 planning and zoning meetings. They had one meeting, had a thorough debate about it, and then postponed it, and then we had to republish and everything. They had another meeting. So they actually had 2 public hearings on this ordinance before the recommendations to city council.
So, just to clarify, if there was an accommodation request, that included allowing additional people to live in a home, would the facts of the request still be evaluated to
No.
determine whether that was a necessary number of people in the home?
No. Our position would, so there, under under the Act, there is an exception under the Act that says if you treat people who are related the same that you treat people who are unrelated, you are not entitled to a reasonable accommodation. You have to comply with the ordinances. And so this is drafted in a way that it says that in no circumstance may someone who has a family who are related, can there be more than 10 people in their home, even if they're all related. You could not have an 11th related person living in the home. And so our position would be 10 is the most related people that can live in a home, and so 10 is the most that anybody can live in the home, even if they're unrelated, even if they're related or unrelated, and therefore no reasonable accommodation is necessary under the law. So we wouldn't do any evaluation with respect to what accommodation is necessary to at all, because we point to our ordinance and say maximum of 10. That's how we treat people with families. That's how we treat people without families.
In the definition of marriage, would it include common law marriage?
It doesn't say that.
So technically someone could assert common law marriage or a licensed marriage.
Certainly.
I don't know, can I make a comment? Just, there's no difference between common law marriage and regular ceremonial marriage. If you're married, you're married. And so I chose to live with my girlfriend, and the city of Rollingwood insisted that I proclaim that we're common law married. That's no different than the city insisting I go down and get a marriage license. And we broke up. There's ramifications of, is she going to come after my property, whatever. So it really doesn't matter whether you put common law marriage in there or not.
Well, I actually wasn't speaking to your case. I was just wanting to make sure I appreciate the comment. I just wanted to understand in general what the scope of marriage was.
Any marriage, common law or go down to courthouse and all that.
Right.
And council, the Planning and Zoning Commission did talk about the number of unrelated people and asked if that was something they could consider, but we haven't advertised it as such. So if that's something the Planning and Zoning wants to take up later, then we would need to publish it as that's the kind of decision they were going to make at that point in time. Right now, we're just talking about number of occupants.
So I think it was at one of the earlier planning and zoning commission meetings. I like the numbers, Kevin, we don't have your numbers on. Under, I gotta go back and do that. 14.02.202B. Now it's 3.
It was always, yeah, it's 2. And that's the same. That hasn't changed.
No, 3.
It's 2.
What I'm
Residents?
talking about is 3.
Right, but I just want to make clear, this says residents, it's prohibited to have residents in a dwelling by 3 or more persons, which means you can have no more than 2.
Right. But
It's
that's-
written in a weird way.
But that's not what I'm talking about.
Oh,
I'm talking about item 3 under that. The way that's worded, where it says occupancy of a dwelling that has been subdivided into 2 or more living areas. I think we need to change that to just say occupancy of a dwelling that includes 2 or more living areas. Because,
You know, subdivided dwelling.
well, you can make it a duplex, whatever, but you can also build it as 2 separate things from the start, so then you haven't subdivided it, but it's still not allowed. So I think that would be better just to say occupancy of a dwelling that includes 2 or more living areas instead of kitchen and bath.
we can make that change if that's the council's will.
Council, see a lot of people potentially breeding and some photographs. Any additional conversation or you plan to take action?
I'm not exactly sure how B3 would apply, but I think that there are homes in Rollingwood that have 2 or more living areas with separate kitchen and bathroom facilities that exist right now. So would this then impose, they were built that way, not because they've been later subdivided that way. Would that mean that you can't dwell in them?
They would be, if you made the change recommended, they would be grandfathered.
Okay.
They couldn't pursuant to whatever regulations we currently have in place for expanding they would be a non-conforming structure.
That you could still
You could
dwell in both
still
places?
dwell in them, you could sell them, you could do everything except what's prohibited in your code, and I'm not familiar with your non-conforming structure, but usually you can't expand it, and if it's burnt down, you have to build it back to code. But they wouldn't be prohibited from being used as they're currently built.
If they wanted to change it more than 50%, then it would be, it would need to come into code.
That's what's already been done, that's
Right.
right.
Okay, I just wanted to verify that we're not saying that people who currently have homes that include 2 or more living areas with separate kitchen and bathroom facilities that are segregated by permanent walls or partitions can't dwell in them any longer.
If you make the change as suggested, to read occupancy of a dwelling utilizing or with 2 or more living areas, it would then bring into the scope of regulation those homes that were built that way, and those homes that were built that way would now fall within that scope of regulatory authority as it has changed. And those folks, if that house burned down, or
We wanted to.
if they wanted to demolish it, or if they
Or-
wanted to add additions, they would be prohibited based on your current ordinance, however that reads, and I was just going to look that up to see how it reads.
It may not be codified yet.
I think that I personally would like to have planning and zoning evaluate that. That seems like a substantive change to me and not just a minor.
It would be, it wouldn't be a minor tweak, it would be a if you do currently have existing homes that were built that way, that's a substantive change to
I'm
that.
just thinking through in my head of ones that I know have, like, and I don't know what would be considered a kitchen area, because some people may have like an area that has a half refrigerator and sink, and I don't know the definition of that.
And it really is a change that's different from what we're contemplating now, and so I would recommend that we go back through the rezoning, through the process for a zoning change.
My concern on that is the whole single-family residence idea. And if that was what we're trying to make sure that we are sticking with single-family residences, if you have 2 separate living areas with separate ingress and egress, whatever, however they came into being, that to me violates the concept of single-family residence. The way I've always understood it is that we did not want people to have garage apartments that they could rent out to somebody else.
I'm actually not thinking about garage apartments, I'm thinking about homes I've been in that have separate, like, because of the way that they were built, they might have a playroom that has a kitchen area, technically.
Well, and that's fine, because this says that they're separate means of ingress and egress, so it's like it's more like a duplex, is the way I'm reading this, is it's set up where you have 2 separate living quarters, not just that you have a kitchen and playroom.
there's a difference in viewpoints between us on it, and so I think it would be outside the scope in my mind of what planning and zoning reviewed for me to vote to make a change like that without them having evaluated the bigger impact on how many different structures would be made non-conforming in the city. I do want to move towards the goal of, we have talked about the theory of single-family residence, but I think over time, it is clear to me that different people have different ideas of what that definition means, and that's frequently what we're trying to work out when we're working on these types of code items.
I'm fine with that, because we have homes for sale that are advertising separate living quarters in the city, and I always thought that that was not what our intention was for the city, so I would, if we need to have P&Z take that up, then that's fine.
To that point, if we do have homes like that, and we suddenly made all those homes non-conforming by action tonight without people having notice of it, I think that would be outside the scope of what was worked on at P&Z.
Don't recommend that.
So do we need to move to send this to P and Z, or is it just procedural that we just ask to send it back on that item?
Well, we could adopt the rest of it, it's already been to P&Z, the rest of it.
Right, you can
So
adopt
we
the rest of
adopt
it.
the rest without that.
If the majority of council is okay with a recommendation that that issue go to P and Z for consideration, then we don't need a formal motion for that to
We can
occur.
still pass them.
We can get consensus from them, unless you prefer a formal motion.
I would like a formal motion.
We can do it after we get this passed?
Yes.
Okay.
Council, you clear on what's in front of you?
Not the only.
Oh, I have one more question, sorry, and then I'll make a motion.
Okay.
Under 4.02.051, numeral 2, it includes is in brackets, and I wasn't sure what that meant.
Could you say?
So it's on page 1, or no, page 2, at the top of the page, 4.02.051, definitions.
Oh, no, that was in the original, ordinance, I just left it, I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
I didn't attempt to address some of that stuff. I don't know why it's in brackets, but we can easily clean it up.
Okay.
It's not substantive. We can.
Okay.
It would make sense to take it.
I
out of
just,
brackets.
I skipped over it a couple times today and thought, I wonder what the brackets mean.
Yeah. Who knows? But we can take them out. It's not substantive.
Okay, well, then I would move to approve the ordinance of the city of Rolling Meadow, Texas, amending the city's zoning regulations, providing for a maximum occupancy of a dwelling located in the city's residential zoning district, deleting unnecessary provisions, providing for a penalty of up to $2,000 per day for a violation of this ordinance, and providing a savings clause repealing conflicting laws and establishing an effective date.
We have a motion from Amy Patillo. Council, you have a second?
Second.
Second from Wendy Hundley. Council discussion? If there's no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, council.
I have two requests on this. It really is much easier, and we started last year, or last spring, whatever, with the line items, line numbers on these things. A whole lot easier to find things on that, because you said on page 2, well, we don't even have page numbers on here,
Right. No, that's
when you're flipping.
Yeah, that's.
That's really helpful.
no excuses, but immediately after P and Z, we had to make the changes, and I sent them over to Lowell for his review, and then I immediately went on vacation, and then immediately came back and went on my 30th anniversary, and it fell through the cracks. I should have gotten it to staff earlier, and I just didn't, so that's my fault.
I wouldn't even have known it was different if I hadn't happened to check this afternoon to see if we had any updates.
We can also add them, come up with the.
So to that point, I actually think Councilmember Massengale has a template that he might be able to provide your firm and
sure he probably
save a little bit of time.
You'll recognize the font.
I bet I will. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you very much. If you could get that to me or get it to Amber, and she can get it to me.
Thanks. Amber, City Administrator, would prefer that the council take specific action to make the recommendation on these partitioned homes to planning and zoning, if anyone is inclined to take up that issue.
I move that we request P&Z evaluate the wording of section 14.02.202 B3 in regard to subdivided and or originally constructed separate living quarters. To see if we need to address that word.
Second.
Motion from Sarah and a second from Amy. Any discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 4-0. Let me the record show that Buck Shapiro is not on the diet for the vote. Sorry, Buck. You're good. At least I didn't say where you were. I definitely got that one. All right. Okay, council. There's no other action coming out of 5.04. We will open up 5.05, public hearing to amend the city's code of ordinances by moving the landscaping regulations from section 3.05 to section 14.02.131 and revising the definition of development application requirements to include a tree survey and protection plan from a certified arborist. We'll open up the public hearing at 7:42. We don't have anyone signed up to speak on this, but if anyone in our back house would like to, please feel free. Going once, going twice. We're going to close the public hearing at 7:42. We'll call 5.08, discussion possible action resulting from the public hearing. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry, thank you.
Okay, so this is moving the tree canopy management ordinance from chapter 3 to chapter 14. So we're going through the proper process to make that happen. And while we were at it, I had requested that we make a requirement and that the homeowners who would like to remove a tree, that they have their tree survey and protection plan drawn up by a certified arborist. Planning Commission did thumbs down to that. So they did thumbs up to moving it to chapter 14, but they said, no, we're not going to require that they submit these things by a certified arborist. I'm fine either way. If you decide that you want to side with P&Z, that's perfectly fine with me.
I think that there are sides here.
Oh, sorry.
But
That was
I certainly,
the wrong word.
I certainly appreciate it.
Take their recommendation. I guess.
Did P&Z also take up the idea of removal of diseased or dead trees?
They did not. That is one thing that maybe
But we did have one instance, is that correct?
We did have
Of
one
a gentleman
instance.
that came in, a dead tree, he was being, or requesting to remove it, and was seeking guidance on whether or not, it was required, that he replant.
So, I know when we had that discussion before, that because we focused the ordinance on encouraging replanting of the tree canopy rather than, and that people have the option of doing the Good Neighbor program, giving a tree at the park, all those different options, that the focus was the canopy replacement, and we weren't able to find a way to distinguish between trees that have been bleached to poison them, to make them dead, and trees that naturally are dying. But if we can find a way to distinguish those two things, I would be happy to entertain that. I think we were trying to find the best balance with that. I've also had to replace a tree that
Yeah.
got blown over in a storm, and it was a really large tree, and I was really sad. I was sad to see the tree go, and then, but I'm replanting,
Sure.
so.
And so, just to be very clear, I appreciate this ordinance was exceptionally thoughtful, in the way it was put together. I'm not sure, I don't have a magic bullet to solve for that, at this juncture, but I did want to put it, on the radar. And I do feel that most of our residents, are, altruistic. And I would just offer one other aspect that, it's potentially a different situation when you're, in the middle of a bill, for instance, to kind of roll that into a building cost versus have a tree blow over or, die from natural causes, and then have to come out of pocket, as an, unanticipated, expense. So, just a thought there. But again, my apologies for not bringing a solution, when I'm trying to come up with words.
Mayor, could one more, council member Shapiro, talk to us about possibly, adding a fee in lieu of as an option? I think some people might like to pay a fee instead of, and so, on either of those items, on the dead tree or on a possible fee in lieu of, if you would like to have me bring that to planning and zoning, if you could do a separate motion.
There's some other changes we're gonna make in this. Just
I think there probably is a solution out there for the dead tree issue. I just don't have it, so it could be something that we could have an arborist recommend. And it was, because we don't have a fee option, we were advised last time that we couldn't have a fee and also have the type of tree replacement that we were trying to propose. We had to do one or the other.
Right.
That the tree replacement seemed like the best solution.
Okay.
I mean, the good neighbor policy seemed like the best solution to try to mitigate potentially someone losing a tree and not having a space to put a new tree.
Sure.
But it is expensive. I just had to pay to have this tree removed that blew down in a storm, and it's not cheap.
So, I think then, I would fall in line with Amber's recommendation. Maybe consider passing, what PZ has, recommended, and then considering, subsequently consider sending, those, additional considerations back to PZ, for them to talk about.
I'm all for finding a way to do the fee if we can find it. We just couldn't. I wrote it, last time I wrote it the first time, thinking that I had gotten around the state statute in order to do it the way we wanted to do it, and then Doug told me that I'd done it incorrectly. So we redrafted the ordinance again to remove any fees. And then if we go back, what my understanding of it, which maybe we will have different counsel now, was that if we add the fee, then we can only require 2-inch tree replacement. So it
That
didn't,
seems weird.
I
There's
didn't,
a lot of circumstances where you probably would plant new trees on your property, so to speak, that you'd be more than willing to pay fees or whatever the park fund and the park use it to plant a bunch of trees.
So, are you ready for a motion? Sorry.
If you're ready to offer,
Comments here?
Well, I just had a question. Why are we moving?
This would be your zoning regulations.
Okay.
That's where I initially drafted it to go, and then I had to renumber the whole thing. So,
You were right initially.
thank you. And my first draft might have been correct as well. We'll see.
You might just take a look at that one again.
I would move to amend the city's code of ordinances by moving the landscape regulations from section 3.05 to section 14.02.131 and revising the definition of development application requirements to include a tree survey and protection plan. Oh, that was the part that you were saying they didn't.
They did not recommend that.
We're just moving it, is all this ordinance would be.
That's, the development application is part of a building permit, right?
Right, so just thought after application.
I thought we had required, I thought when I had drafted it that we had included a requirement that the arborist do that part. But maybe that didn't make it in there, so, okay. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and make the motion in revising the definition of development application requirements to include a tree survey and protection plan from a certified arborist.
So, the P and Z recommendation is not to do that, but instead to have the city arborist do it? So does that mean the city's managing it instead of the resident?
The city still had, I likened it to like when you engineer something, so the property owner brings engineered plans and then our city engineer reviews the stamped plans. So the same thing I envisioned with the tree survey and protection plan being drawn up by a certified arborist, and then the city has their arborist review the arborist plan.
And that's what this motion does.
That's what I believe, right, Amy? That's what your motion is.
But that's not what we did last time.
Right, today, so P and Z said, we agree to moving it from 3 to 14, but no, we do not recommend that you require a tree survey and protection plan be done by a certified arborist. So they could have anybody draw up their plan today, and then the city's arborist will review that.
And then we're charging back for the cost of the city arborist, our city arborist to do it.
So it would still have an arborist reviewing it.
Right.
We just wouldn't have two arborists reviewing it.
It's just the quality of the plans that we would
But they
receive.
can write it on a napkin and give it to the arborist to review.
They could,
it doesn't mean the arborist would sign off on it, but
Right.
theoretically.
So
right.
we don't really know, like, they would then the arborist for the city have to go on site and inspect if it's not signed off by a certified arborist? Like, what sort of problems would that bring if you don't have, like, a resident who has a certified arborist?
Well, first of all, I have not really run into anybody who hasn't in Willowwood. So I guess it's really not been a problem yet, but I do feel this would give me some backbone to enforce that. The city arborist would have to eventually inspect the replanting, and so if it didn't match what and if we got complaints about their protection measures, then it would go out there and enforce that way. So there'd be likely no inspection when the plan is just submitted, but when we go to perform the final inspection of the planning that's when that would.
So the way that it's written now supports staff being able to manage it a little bit easier?
Right.
Okay.
What is the estimated cost that we're adding since we did that?
Estimated cost of the property owner?
Yes.
Well, it depends, because if they submitted something on a napkin and it took the city's arborist more time to review, the property owner is being charged by the city's arborist. No napkins.
Okay.
If something was submitted,
Manual landscape.
if something was,
Not drafted on that.
or maybe they're just like out of the gate, they get it right, and even without an arborist, I don't know. But I would say maybe a couple $100.
But could it be in your like plan, like when you have your site plan and they mark where the trees are, could it be a part of that that's not done by an arborist? Yeah,
Yeah, when you get your tree survey back, it tells you all
right.
trees.
okay.
So is it, and that's like, I get that it would give you all an extra thing to do, but right now, or do you think that probably landscape architects are doing it rather than certified arborists? Because there is an extra cost when you hire a certified arborist versus a landscaper.
I have not run
Right.
into anybody who has not used an arborist. So it's not a problem. And that's why I'm fine with the way it is, or the way that planning and zoning recommended it.
And what we have in front of us reflects what planning and zoning.
What you have in front of you is what planning and zoning considered. And until we got different direction from council, we didn't want to revise this to take out the tree protection.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm lost. What is in front of, what did
What
planning
is,
and zoning recommend? Is that what I have up,
what you have up is what I recommended at planning and zoning,
but not what they?
not what they recommended.
They, they didn't recommend, I think, the change to 14.02.14A1, which is on page 9.
On page 9. 02141. Okay.
Because most people have a tree survey.
But it may not
Most
be
people have a
considered
tree
as arborist.
survey.
Yeah, mine's not certified arborist. It's
So
a
that-
lawn surveyor. So I have to pay an arborist to come do with my surveyor.
Mhm.
For 3 times almost, because you do
Yeah,
the
you're paying the city.
surveyor, the arborist, and the city arborist.
Yeah, seems like if you pay the surveyor,
That's
to
why
do
I
your tree
covered
survey,
that before, because I felt like it
and the
was.
city's doing it, it's covered.
Does the surveyor designate what kind of trees are on it? Okay.
And the size.
Yeah, so that's it.
Okay, well, I would like to either amend or replace my motion. I'm not sure which one we're doing now. Charlie, if I wanted to go back.
It is second.
Did you get a second?
Is it not?
I didn't get a second. Okay,
Absolutely.
it died. Okay, I'll make a new motion. I would move to amend the city's code of ordinances by moving the landscaping regulations from section 3.05 to section 14.02.131.
Second.
A motion for Amy and second from Wendy. Council, any additional discussion? All in favor?
So are we just moving or we,
We're just moving,
Only moving.
so not with Amber's changes?
correct.
Just moving what we currently have? Okay.
Any additional discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. 5.09, public hearing to amend the city's code of ordinances by moving the prohibition on short-term rentals from section 8.07 to section 14.02.214, revising the definition of short-term rental and providing for additional penalties for violation. We're going to open the public hearing at 7:59. We don't have anyone signed up to speak, but if there is anyone here that would like to. Okay, we're going to close the public hearing at 8 o'clock. And call up 5.12, discussion and possible action resulting from the public hearing.
Are you gonna address it, or are you gonna address it?
It's strictly moving.
Yeah, well, two minor changes. In the in your original regulations, It says that a short-term rental is defined as a rental of property for a period of less than a month. That's changed to less than 30 days, because my preference is 30 days than a term a month. And the second is the violation is being increased from $500 a day to $2,000 a day, because that's what's authorized for zoning violations. Other than that, we're moving it from your nuisances to your zoning code. Because that's where it needs to be.
Council, do we have discussion? Council inclined to take any action?
I move to amend the city's code of ordinances by moving the prohibition on short-term rentals from section 8.07 to section 14.02.214, revising the definition of short-term rental and providing for additional penalties for violation.
Do we need to clarify the amount of that?
No.
I second, understanding this is just reorganizing our code to where it should be, because this is already an existing one on those. Yes, okay,
With additional penalties,
with additional penalties.
30 days.
So we have a motion from Amy, second from Wendy. Discussion, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, council. I'll call it the consent agenda.
Oh, one more help.
Oh, sorry. Did I skip that? I sure did.
We're still doing some cleanup.
Sorry, guys. 5.13, public hearing to amend the city's code of ordinances, section 14.02.983B, hearing and notice. We will open up the public hearing at 8:02. There's no one signed up to speak. Anyone in the audience care to give public comment? We will close the meeting at, the public hearing rather, at 8:02. And I'll call it 5.16, discussion and possible action resulting from the public hearing. Charlie, you want to recap us very quickly on why
Sure.
this is necessary?
Yes, your current regulations say not less than 15 days prior to the hearing, notice of the date, time, and location thereof will be published in the official newspaper of a paper or a newspaper of general circulation of the city. That's for public hearings on changes to your zoning code. That's inconsistent with state law. You're actually a day short. So the legislature, when they drafted this or whatever, whoever drafted this, not the legislature, whatever individual legislature, when they drafted this, it says before the 15th day before the date of the hearing, which means it has to be 16 days before. Your code says 15 days before, so if you follow your code, you miss the requirement and you've got to republish all over again. So we're just bringing our code in consistent with state law to make sure that if we're looking at the code instead of the state statute, we're still doing it right.
Thank you, Charlie. Council, do you have any comments or inclined to make a motion?
I move to amend the city's code of ordinances, section 14.02.983B, hearing and notice, to the suggested changes by our city attorney.
Second.
We have a motion from Wendy and a second from Gavin. Additional comments or thoughts, council? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Now I will call up the consent.
Sort of question.
Yes, sir.
So I like that we're cleaning these up. Obviously, we've been catching some.
Yeah, we're going through things.
And I assume these three, or these few that we've done, does not constitute the full.
Does not.
Okay, we'll just kind of do them as we.
Yes, sir.
Well done.
Okay. That's all I
Should we have the record reflect that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing?
have. Work.
We're working.
Doing work.
Okay.
With no other comments, appreciate everyone's patience, obviously, as we transition into a new city secretary position. And ideally, next time, hopefully very far down the road, this ever happens again, we'll have a level of training before the vacancy. We'll move into the regular agenda, 7.01, discussion policy.
Did they take a vote? They didn't vote.
Sorry, vote please. Our count conversation. How are you
Bag of
doing?
chips.
I do. I'm doing the nap if I could do both.
Just coming through.
Sorry, council, didn't mean to cut you short. We have a motion and a second. Any additional thoughts? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Now we'll call 7.01. Discussion and possible action authorizing the execution of an agreement with AWR Services for water and wastewater maintenance and utility.
She likes
You're
her
just
own.
a giver, man. Thank you. Sorry, just to recap, we've been going back and forth on a couple of items with AWR, with the scope of services. We've got we changed a few red lines between our legal teams, and I believe what we have in front of us is an agreement that is agreeable, both from city administration and our attorney, as well as AWR. Is that a factual recap, Amber?
This is true. I think we incorporated the recommendation that you made last time by videoing the repair work that they do for that. And then also, they had never seen a professional services agreement that we're now using that Charlie gave to us. So they had some questions, so then we went back and forth on that. One thing that we compromised on was response time for after hours calls. We had it in there as an hour. Hal explains that sometimes they can't be here an hour when it's the middle of the night, so we went to an hour and a half, I believe. And everything else we agreed to, so.
Nice.
Hal, did you have anything you wanted to speak on or address?
No, sir, I think we're in agreement. We've worked with your attorneys and staff. We're happy with the agreement. We believe the staff is also. Unless there's some changes, we're happy to execute that agreement.
I appreciate AWR's help through the process. Thank you. Council, you've got a pretty thoughtful agreement in front of you. Do you have any comments or inclinations to move on?
I would move to authorize the execution of an agreement with AWR Services for water and wastewater maintenance and utility billing.
Second.
A motion from Andy and a second from Wendy. Discussion, council? All in favor?
Okay.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, council. Thank you, Hal, for making
Thank
time.
you very much. I'll go home and see my wife now.
Absolutely. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
7.02, discussion of possible action on an ordinance to provide for regulation of shared mobility device businesses in the city. We discussed this previously with regards to bike sharing and scooters. I will turn this over to Amy Patilla.
Thank you. So the ordinance that's attached here is a sample ordinance that one of our neighbors provided me, who manages the scooters and shared bikes for Uber. And I reviewed it and liked the template, but wanted to give it a first look before, by the counselor, if there were any comments to it before we continue tweaking it a bit more for rolling with, to see if there was anything that stood out. The other thing I wanted to comment on is that in discussion with Amber and Chief Pompa, and then also my understanding of kind of physical limitations of scooters versus bikes that are shareable, that really because Rollingwood has hills and shared scooters are not designed to be ridden on hills, we are not an area that they would recommend people riding them regularly. Whereas the shared bikes, this is the type of area where it would be more conducive because they have that motor that can help you get up and down the hills, so you're not as sweaty when you get to the place that you're trying to go. And so that's what I have, and just thought I would get first comments before we come back next meeting with potentially, we started looking at some of the smaller cities around us that have intentionally restricted the shared scooters. Dripping Springs, Fredericksburg, Pflugerville, to kind of preemptively realize that they have spaces that might suddenly be used. And I liked the point that Papa made, that they're a little different because they don't have another city next to them that has decided to allow them. So we're kind of making sure that we look at how that interaction is different, and I'm waiting to hear back some answers on some questions of how the different providers might be able to actually enforce us restricting the scooters if we do that. So
This is dockless, so somebody can leave it parked in front of somebody else's house, but people come and pick them up and charge them at night. Maybe they're in a service area?
on the bikes,
Or how does that?
I think that's something where I think we can define it, if we want it to be any space in the city, or if we want to have specific spaces that you can drop off and pick up. I think that's for us to define.
So like, there are ones that you can drop off and pick up, like the e-cycle, is it?
There's the red ones.
So there's actually docked,
Mhm.
but there's also dockless, so we have to specify whether or not they're dockless or docked.
I've got some comments.
Great.
Nobody else did. So this to me reads like, an ordinance to restrict licensing of a business in Rollingwood, but not something that restricts operation of those devices in Rollingwood.
Okay.
So I would say that we are less likely to have a business that wants to permit themselves and have, a normal setup in Rollingwood. But we're gonna have lots of people riding scooters. I mean, scooters is all I've seen in the city so far. I haven't seen anybody with a shared bicycle in here, but there's a number of scooters. I was walking my dog the other night and somebody in a scooter went zipping past me in the dark. So we have the scooters coming in, and they've been dropped off at the park, and they didn't rent them in Rollingwood. So the license is held in Austin, but they're riding them in here, so I would think that we should include something on, my bigger concern is where are they allowed to drive, and what restrictions do we put in place on where they get dropped off,
On the scooters or on the bikes?
on any of them.
Okay.
There's nothing included in here about scooters. I think that's gonna be an issue, because we've already started seeing that.
Right, so we're proposing doing a separate ordinance that would restrict it, so I'll take that into
Okay.
account.
All right, well,
So where they park.
this is all we've gotten, so I didn't know what all we were covering.
So this would just cover the licensee piece of it, not the prohibition.
Right, yeah, we started looking at what some other cities were doing to prohibit it, and then wanted to work with Charlie and their firm to get something that wouldn't get struck down immediately, that would prohibit it, because I know there's some different interests that are working on that right now.
Could you included this, I'm looking at the penalties and license revocation. Could you include a penalty for a company that
Mhm.
and say that there's a penalty, like you can pull a license to have shared bikes, but you can't, we're not gonna allow you to pull a license for the scooters. So if anybody drops a scooter, and then add a penalty to say, if you're operating in the city with a scooter, and find it, you're subject to the penalty.
Okay, so it kind of
That's
ties,
just a thought.
yeah. I think that ties into some of the questions I sent over to Uber asking how, whether they can actually restrict scooters from, like if they can like shut off people from even being able to ride them, or whether they're only able to just fine them. Because then they would basically fine them whatever our fine is, and then they would pass through it. Yeah,
Geofencing.
yeah, the geofencing thing, yeah. But I like the idea of tying the two where, yeah, you can operate bikes, but that means that you have to also abide by our scooter rules, or you're agreeing to these fines.
Impounding if they
Okay.
They kind of,
bring
Mhm.
impound, thing like storms and like that.
I mean, they actually follow the rules more than you think they do, because it was a huge issue on Town Lake, like when they were in money, they were everywhere. And in the last 3 or 4 months, I mean, you've hardly seen them. Unless there's an event going on down there, and somebody that's, probably from out of town doesn't know. You just don't see it, you're not seeing it as much as you were before. So they definitely pay attention.
So I don't understand the ones that come in to the city and get left. I'm confused.
I am too.
They just ride in,
Well, they're riding in from other places, but
where do they go?
They want someone's house.
And they just leave it?
Yeah.
They left one in front of my house and they didn't come to my house.
You're gonna see no one with that.
That's where I died.
That's what I'm confused about. That could be possible. How do they, this isn't exactly a destination. I mean, how do you,
McKay's collecting, so.
that's where they're going.
His boys are collecting.
There's a black market. It's melting them down.
I have seen the bikes being ridden through Rollingwood, but I haven't seen them left. And I think, so one of the things, I'll advocate a little bit for the reason I think the bikes would be good is potentially they could be placed by the 2 bus stops that are on the 2 sides of Rollingwood, and it would solve the last mile problem for some people to be able to have that access point, and hopefully would be able to work with them to make sure that there's a good, consistent amount placed in that area, so people who are working in Rollingwood, who want to take the bus, can more reliably use a bike for that last part. Yeah. And maybe over by Trader Joe's, there would be a place to put another one, or at the Endeavor building, we may be able to get some of the different businesses to buy into kind of designating a spot and providing a charging area too.
If we allow somebody with dog bikes to have a contract with the city to come in, can we choose then not to allow dogless bikes to come in? Does that, are we allowed to pick and choose?
Yeah, I see what.
Sorry, city.
Only allowed, so it would have to be only for dog bikes, like specifically. We'd have to specify, right?
Can I say something? So I was curious where this ordinance came from. I guess it's from an Uber representative. I'll remind everybody that we're not a home rule city. We're a general law city. And there's some of this stuff in here that they gave you, a home rule city could absolutely do as concerns whether or not a general law city can do it. If I'm hearing y'all, and tell me if I'm hearing you incorrectly, which I'm sure you'll do, we want to be able to license a business so that their scooters cannot use our streets or right-of-ways without being properly licensed to do so, and some regulations that we have some authority to enforce. And then do we also want to regulate the individual users with respect to how they can use these devices, whether they're rented or not rented within our community?
I think that's the question is, what can we do?
Well, you have a lot of authority over your right-of-way, so.
But could we, so if we were we're talking about wanting it to just be dockless bikes, and we went ahead and issued a permit or whatever system that we put into place for a company to come in with dockless bikes. As a general law city, could we prohibit dockless bikes and only allow dock bikes? Or is that something we're not allowed to do?
I don't know. This is why I like this job, I guess. You played Stump the Zec today, because this is a fairly unique problem for y'all, because most of my small general law cities are very rural. So they don't have dockless bikes or scooters coming into their community because there's not a market for it. So that's why I didn't know if maybe this came from your neighbor, which is also a general law city. But I can figure that out fairly easily by talking to other folks that may represent
This
smaller.
came from our neighbor who works for
And so I think, you have broad authority with respect to as a general law city, with respect to regulating your streets and your rights of ways. What you can't get into is regulating the business of dockless scooters. And so we have to make sure that we're staying within our lane of regulating our rights of ways and our streets. And so I think that you could probably say, yeah, we're okay with bikes, but we're not okay with motorized scooters. I think that's probably for safety issues. All of those are just because you have broad authority over your right of ways and your streets. If we can get some if we could come back with some, you with Councilmember, and we can come back with some general regulations from that perspective, and then you can make a decision. Okay, how do you want to handle? Do you want to handle the scooters the same way we handle these bikes, or differently? And I can give you more information with respect to that.
Thank you.
And I will just say, arguing the flip side of this too, if we were to do something that regulates against scooters, it's all fine until we start writing tickets to all our neighbors who get ridden in the back of a AC pedal. And then we'll get a fearful.
I do know that, I believe that the agreement, when you rent a dockless scooters, you're supposed to be 18 or older. But kids have been known to get the dockless scooters and ride them around, which they go a lot faster, and they generally, a lot of times, don't have a helmet with them. And so that would be my concern, for just the safety aspect of having, that's, I think, probably what prompted some of the discussion here amongst the council, is seeing that we have younger kids riding the scooters in the city limits, and we don't have any regulation to say, hey, that's not safe. They're, violating an agreement, but are we able to stop that?
Do they still have to be a licensed driver to operate a scooter or not? On our city streets?
Probably not.
We've got a number of kids who own their own.
And the kids'
Right.
scooters go a little
Sure you do.
slower, and they tend to have their helmet on when they do it, but the adult scooters they're up like this, and they go really fast, and they don't have a helmet usually, so I think that they're different. I'm not opposed to kids having scooters and riding their scooters, but I do think that I'm just against fun.
I've been accused of that too. I don't know if it's true or not.
You said they are very quiet. If I hadn't seen the little bitty headlight on that, I would have walked, my dog and I would have stepped right out in front of that scooter. Because you can't hear it all, and it was dark, and it just went zipping right past, so. From a safety standpoint, that's a concern, just to make sure that we have some restriction on where they're operating them.
I'd like to be able to get a better feel for the scope of your authority as a general law city, and bring that back to you, so that as you're having this discussion, it's a discussion that's limited within the scope of what you can actually regulate. So if that's all right with y'all?
Yes, thank you.
Charlie, Ray, I impose on you to make sure it gets back for September.
Well, absolutely. Yeah, whatever your timeline is, we'll make sure it gets done.
ACL is in the beginning of October, and we're liable to have a whole pile of scooters
it's not within the scope of the zoning ordinance, and it's up to you. You can ask them, but it's not within the jurisdiction of the zoning.
Do we bring it back as a public hearing, maybe?
You
next
can
month?
absolutely do that, publish it in the newspaper, put it in ads, or
I think, do we need to make a motion to do that, or do we just direct staff?
it's up to you. You can direct staff, but I don't know how much you.
For this one, I think you can just direct me. Okay.
You say it would be how long?
You wouldn't mind, publishing it in the newspaper for a public hearing and then having a public hearing on it to get some input, and then we'll have a fully informed, view of it when, Charlie comes back next month too, so that'll be good.
Even not just from a regulation standpoint, but from a public safety standpoint. If there's anything, Crystal, if there's anything that you can think of that we just need to educate the citizens about, especially before ACL, because I can see that being a really popular way for people to get back up the hill at the end of the day. So we're liable to have a lot of them coming into the city at that time. And just, even if you need to reinforce that, you know, a scooter is a motor vehicle, you're supposed to follow the same rules that a motor vehicle follows. You ride on the same side of the street as a motor vehicle so that you know which direction to look, and we don't have scooters riding on the wrong side of the street, and, you know, you look left and they're coming from the right and you pull out in front of them. I mean, there's a lot of issues like that that I think just some public education might be.
Sounds like a good thing for your budget.
So one thing I'll do too is I'll follow up with the city of Austin, because I know they're like stop by and whatnot. When they geofence, they're supposed to geofence to where if you're going into like our city, that it doesn't stop, the meter just keeps running and running and running and charges them that as their fine, kind of. So let me double check to see what they are gonna have in place for ACL, so we don't also get littered with their scooters.
Wait,
Can we just stop on that checking on Northern
The
Drive?
meter, they said that it basically just keeps charging.
They try to run it forever.
Yeah, it doesn't turn off.
But does that go to the,
It goes to whoever leased the
Yeah.
scooter.
but like the
The company.
The
gets-
company-
It's gonna be the company that, they're the ones that geofence, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's gonna be the
That's,
company.
that's where I was
That's
going,
great.
that's exactly.
Yes, so, right, so they're already, so,
Yeah, I don't know enough about how this, because I haven't had to deal with this, but it sounds like the company has a geotechnology, has a geofence an area where they're authorized, and then the company tells the
We could
people
take
who
the
ride
fine.
that they can't go outside this area.
Right.
If it does, they just continually get charged,
Right.
even if they leave the pipe there.
Right.
And the scooter or whatever, it's just not gonna be impounded, and then they have to pay us a fine.
that's right, we were,
Like one of those,
we had talked about it, they passed the geofence and that it just stops the scooters all together like
Oh,
geofence,
yeah.
but
Anyway, I'll come back.
Can't they do that? Don't they have to, they can do that.
because that's what we would prefer, is that they just killed it.
If you let car to go.
Mayor, can you talk to C3 about that?
I'm sure they'd love to have that discussion.
Well, maybe a sign, if we did prohibit, if it was within our authority to prohibit it, then we could put a sign at the city entrances.
Other thing is you impound them and whoever left it there is gonna get billed for it. And the city gets the proceeds.
Let's get directions.
We're
So
gonna
in the
have
back of the
two
city
pickups,
police
man.
pickup truck is
City.
taking
Yeah.
it.
It's impounded in the truck.
We'll just hook them up to our trailer.
Like it.
It's all lot clippers.
Okay.
Thanks for the conversation, that helps give us even more direction.
Thanks for bringing this, Andy. Good job.
Council, no action on 7.02.
Informal action, just directing staff to publicly notice it so we can have a public hearing.
Thank you, Wendy. 7.03, discussion regarding regulations for vagrancy and loitering. This is obviously a topic on many folks' minds. We don't have anything specifically regarding items. wanted to make sure that this item was put in front of you for thoughts and discussion.
In your packet, Shirley provided a question and answer from TML. And so it says maybe we could enact a littering prohibition, but the city cannot prevent homeless people from panhandling. So it gives you some kind of guidance on these two issues. As you know, we reviewed our prohibited activities in public spaces at the last meeting, and we are solid on that issue. But just want to continue to explore any and all possible ordinances that you might want to consider to enact.
Charlie, do you have any ordinances that y'all have worked on under this topic?
I was just thinking about that, panhandling, yes. Loitering is more complicated because how it's defined. But yes, panhandling, I've never been able to successfully come up with what I thought was a defensible loitering ordinance. But certainly, we have some ordinances out there that we've done just recently, I think, that dealt with not panhandling specifically, but it has to be any sort of solicitation in the public right of way, whether it's panhandling, whether it's for nonprofit reasons. And we have done some ordinances like that just recently. We just did one for the city of, I think for the city of Fairwoods Ranch.
Would it fall under solicitation?
Yes.
So we have a solicitation ordinance in the residential area. I don't know if it covers for the business district.
I haven't read it.
You know, they have a revenue line item for it. It doesn't make very much money.
I mean, there's First Amendment issues, so typically everything's going to have to meet a strict scrutiny standard. And so you just have to come up with, purposes, the legitimate purposes for the restrictions to meet the strict scrutiny standard.
There was a city council discussion for the Austin City Council about this, I think last month, and I read a newspaper article about it, and it defined some of this to give the police more authority to deal with things that becomes dangerous or aggressive.
Yeah, we have things like that.
Right.
We've drafted those types of regulations
Yeah.
as well. I can bring something back that's broad in scope, in that it addresses solicitation and what's the other one? Peddling in general, which would also address some of these issues like right-of-way panhandling, right-of-way solicitations, things of that nature. That we have drafted, that we have felt can be defended.
It might be good to, while doing that, to also just look at our current solicitation.
Yeah, I would definitely do it.
Because that's what, the first thing I
That'd be
thought
the
of when I
first
read
thing
this
I
was
do.
just, I wonder whether our current solicitation ordinance will hold up or not.
I think right now,
Stays within the city limits.
City limits, so it's the business district as well.
Yes.
if it's a commercial entity,
4.04.05.
you have to get a permit.
They have to get a permit.
You can't, there's First Amendment things
Right.
where people can do it for religious and
Right.
other reasons, I think.
I think they're, yeah, I read through it, it's just been a while.
And we've recently been dealing with a pest control company that is going through and looking at everybody's solicitation ordinances and sending threatening letters if they don't meet the current test. Test circuit is weird, but so they're using some other circuits as their examples, but challenging the hours in which you can solicit into that nature. But yes, we can look at that.
Okay. Sorry. Additional comments, thoughts, council, or councilor? that's what's kind of triggered our review of this. I think we're probably prudent to at least have the city attorney review what we do have on the books to make sure that it's adequately drafted.
And if there's suggestions for additional ways to help the police to have opportunities to work with people differently.
I think that's probably, to your point, Gavin, I think that's probably our primary, that should be our primary motive, to make sure that our police department has the tools necessary to do their job.
Yeah, and I really would rather not spend your dollars on things you don't want, that isn't a big problem. I'd rather spend those on things that really need to be.
7.04, discussion of possible action to direct city boards and commissions to establish an annual meeting schedule for the public. It took a breath of fresh air from a relatively newer council member to help us underscore or address our issues of quorum that so frequently happen over the summer. Buck, you want to give us your 2 cents on why this made a heck of a lot of sense on this agenda?
So I kind of brought it up as an idea that there was such an issue with all of our commissions, and everybody kept rescheduling for different dates and moving things around over and over and over again. There's a million emails going out, and no one made any meetings. I think that's just not happening. We didn't have a quorum. Maybe it would make more sense during part of the summer months to not have meetings on those days, just all together. Everybody knows about it in advance. That would be beneficial.
Just to underscore,
Sorry, so going through this circus where there's all the time that staff spends receiving emails, then rescheduling, to reschedule again, and it still doesn't happen. And this happened a bunch of times.
yeah, it's a recurring issue every summer. That's why I thought it. There you go. Somebody suddenly came up with an idea that I certainly hadn't
And
heard.
then I felt like we could hold people more accountable to the meetings that we do have on the calendar during the school year, so to speak, for
So the question that was
scheduling purposes.
the question that was posed to our city attorney was whether we have the authority to do that, and if so, how would we facilitate that? That's you, Charlie.
So that's an actual question being asked to me right now, or I have been asked previously, because I don't remember that.
Megan
Oh, okay,
was asked and
okay.
she answered, and she, right now, the ordinances, each commission sets their own schedule, but placed it on here as such to direct the boards and commissions to establish a schedule, as Buck suggested, for the spring, for the fall, and maybe they can get their business done. It is a tremendous amount of work, especially for like planning and zoning and board of adjustment, when they don't have their meeting because of quorum, we have to republish, we have to, it's crazy.
Well, there's also statutory requirements for how,
Not for boards and commissions. Well, there is for certain.
for P and Z, if you've got a plat that you have to review, because if you don't do it within a certain time, then it's automatically approved, right? And so that's kind of an issue, not having,
This doesn't restrict calling a meeting to address a plat. But, right, I mean, we didn't meet in July twice for park commission, maybe even June for park commission. Board of Adjustment didn't meet all summer. Planning and zoning had one special meeting. So it was really difficult trying to reschedule meetings, trying to republish. It was a lot of work.
Meg's answer was yes.
Yes.
On an administrative level, we have that SWIFT 911, perhaps when our city secretary gets in, where we can set up the meetings, and then people can press 1 if they're gonna be there, and 2 if they're not gonna be there, and respond in that way. So just a note on that, just, we can set those up once we have a schedule, and then send them out before the meeting at a certain time, so we'll know whether or not there's a quorum, like for P and Z, perhaps, 30 days in advance. And it would be automated.
For our boards and commission
always, as a city, work in the spirit of the Texas Open Meetings Act for our boards and commissions, but maybe, I don't know that the park commission, because they're not a body that makes decisions, we assume that they are, and we always, as a city, have been on the cautious side in making sure that we follow it to a T, but that's a good question for you. If we're not being effective with members' times and they're able to, you know, I like transparency and openness, I'm just,
Most of the clinics require the boards and commissions to comply with it.
yeah, we do. We're very careful with that as a city.
Okay, well, that's, some good discussion. Do we have any thoughts on it?
So we'd be directing them to do like a September 2019 through August 2020 schedule? Is that like what schedule are we talking about?
Are we directing them to say when they're meeting, or are we directing them to say when they're not?
It's a good question. The problem, the most difficult months to fill, the most difficult month is August. July is really tough. June starts getting pretty tough, especially for the folks that are anywhere beyond the first week after school's let out, kind of thing. So after the first and second week of June, you start getting a little tighter, as people start heading out for their vacation. You know, the more I think through this, I almost wonder if you do give them the boards and commissioners, you know, that window, the presumption will be that they're just not going to be there, and so it might make it more difficult to call them back in the instance of a unnecessary meeting. It's a possibility. Again, I don't know. I'm generally of the line, you don't know until you've tried it, and the worst case scenario is it doesn't work out better, and you go back to what it was, right? So, that's my 2 cents. What I can tell you right now is it's exceptionally difficult to make quorum June, July, and August. And it does not matter which board you were on, or commission you were on, and it does not matter which day of the week it meets. It's just difficult.
So I wonder if we could direct the boards and commissions like planning and zoning and board of adjustments and potentially utility commission, I suppose, that potentially have deadline triggers to set, in their schedule, to set tentative dates for June, July, and August, that if they materialize, they would recognize that they would be required. If there's something that has to go on the agenda, then that's the date. So they go ahead and set them, and then people can put them in their schedule, knowing that those will get canceled unless there's a
Something that's required.
Right.
For various purposes.
Right.
To their council.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think utility commission has any
It's really planning.
statutory deadlines.
So I think it would be board of adjustments
Yeah.
and planning and zoning.
So the Board of Adjustments is typically, if it's run properly, not going to have a regular meeting. Board of Adjustments are only going to meet at those times when they're necessary to meet because a resident has requested a variance or they're appealing a decision from your administrator. So you can't set those, except to say that although some new legislation was just passed, and I can't remember if it requires things to be done in a certain time frame. So I suppose you could say the Zoning Board of Adjustment will hold its meetings on the second Wednesday of every month, and so that they know to hold that date open if they're needed to meet. The downside to that is that if somebody files a request to have a variance or to appeal a decision of the zoning administrator, if they file it on the third Wednesday of the month, then they're going to wait 30 days before the meeting. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that ZBOA is not like the Planning and Zoning Commission that is going to meet on a regular basis.
They do have a lot of alternates though, so they may have.
That is correct. And that's the reason for that. And it's also really important for zoning board of adjustment because you have to have at least 4 people under the statute be at that meeting, and 5 people are on the board. And
So I going to P&Z, to see if we have a board of adjustment. Right now our code says we have to have 5.
That is going to P&Z, yes. But it's more so our code is more restrictive than state statute, where we added this little thing under creation of the Board of Adjustment that said all cases will be heard by 5 members of the BOA. So last time I had 4, and I relied on state statute. I didn't look under creation of Board of Adjustment. I looked under meetings and was under the assumption that 4 would be sufficient for quorum, and then at the last minute, someone pointed out to me, oh, you missed this part of the code that says 5. So we're gonna ask to change that to make it 4 to meet state statute.
So, are you ready for any action or do you have a discussion? Do you, what do you want to phrase it? I'm gonna do it again. All right. Mayor, are you ready for a motion?
Yes, ma'am, we're ready to do it.
I would move to direct the city boards and commissions to establish an annual meeting schedule for the public. And for Board of Adjustment and Planning and Zoning to designate summer meetings as tentative. Or as required.
We have a motion from Amy. Do we have any? Wait a second.
Second.
Second. Second from Wendy. Do any thoughts or comments? Council discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Council. 7.05, discussion possible action regarding a recommendation from the Utility Commission on amendments to the water appeal policy. Andrew, would you mind guiding us through this real quick?
Sure. So the Utility Commission has been looking at other ways to save money rather than just, or to raise revenue rather than just raise rates. And so one thing that they asked staff to look at was the billing adjustment process. Since we noticed that was significant last November, we had received a lot of requests for adjustments. And so I've got a report, a memo in your packet, and it speaks to kind of the items that Utility Commission considered. And then there's a red line version that shows the decisions that they made. First of all, they wanted to make sure that all contested portions of the account be paid and kept current. They also, well, this actually came from the attorney and myself, just to officially designate the Utility Commission as the hearing officer always. In the code, it's not correct. It says it should come to council first, and then y'all would designate a hearing officer, and then it would go to Utility Commission. In application, we're not actually doing that process. We're just sending everything straight to the Utility Commission. So that cleans that up. They changed it to say that appeals will be filed 6 months after receiving the first contested bill, rather than a year.
No later.
Right. And then it said adjustments of bills for periods exceeding 3 months will be considered except in extraordinary circumstances as determined at the direction of the city. Water volume charges, maybe reduce to actual per gallon cost to the city, because we had been just charging $1 over the wholesale water rate, when in fact it was costing more at times than the dollar over the wholesale water rate, because that wholesale water rate was not including our standing monthly charges. It also can be impacted by how much water we consume, so it fluctuates every month, and so we're going to be using that as the basis for what the what they have to pay if they appeal their bill.
I thought Jackie Bob was doing some of this.
He is, so, but this he still will. This just tightens it up a little bit for him.
So, does he track, what he does, like, what, is there like a way of tracking, the appeals that Jackie Bob handles versus what goes through the appeals process? Are we tracking that at all?
I believe you probably receive a report from AWR that shows how many appeals, or I guess adjustments, they have made. And so a majority of those.
Using a whole report in general?
AWR's report.
Yeah, so, I just was wondering, like, so Jackie Bob's making the adjustment, and then it's going to AWR, we get that in that report, then what actually goes to the utility commission?
Only if they are still unsatisfied with Jackie Bob's. Right.
If there's something that's beyond his authority to grant,
Which would be like,
somebody doesn't like the answer that they get.
the answer that they get from him.
Yeah.
And what are his guidelines? The same as what our guidelines are here?
Yes, these are his correct.
Yeah.
And then they basically appeal his interpretation of the guidelines. If they're not happy, it goes to the utility commission.
Just to clarify, I think that at different points we've asked AWR to show us the amount of the appeal cost, but I don't know that they've ever actually added it to the report. Because I've never seen it on a monthly report, and I go through it pretty carefully. The one that we get.
The adjustment.
Yeah, the adjustments, yeah.
Okay. One thing we could do, because, I mean, really, our staff is preparing the sheet that gets sent over to AWR. So we prepare something for them to implement the adjustment. So, but it would have somebody's account information on that. Maybe we could have a total of that or something in the
I don't want
report.
to add more administrative burden into the reporting for the
Yeah,
staff.
I think AWR though, when that was done, said that they could,
Have them.
they said they could provide that in this
Add that.
report. They just never, remember
They
when we
never
all
have.
met at the utility commission, they said they were gonna do it, but never did.
Just get them, because they said they can do some custom reports, we'll just sign an agreement with them, maybe we just reach out and say, hey, you said you would work on these reports for us. And then that way it doesn't add an extra step for staff.
For y'all, yeah.
Okay.
What's the good about the discussion, council? Do we have any additional? Would you like to take action?
So are we going to formally adopt the changes, or,
I would ask you to, yes.
okay? Because after seeing it in writing, there's a couple things that I think we should tweak a little bit. In the third paragraph, where it talks about the no later than 6 months after receipt of the first contested utility bill, I would suggest that we change that to issuance of the first contested utility bill, because we don't know when they received it. And so, as far as what's the start date of that, how do you prove when they it's the
Determining
date.
when, yeah,
When
it
it starts.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you,
180
when
days.
you receive the bill or when you
Right.
issue the bill.
I was just, while we're working on that section, rewording that specific, instead of it saying 3 months, we could, in addition to what you're saying, also say 180 days instead of 3 months.
6 months.
And then
It's
90 days.
except that the bills are issued monthly, so I don't think that's a big deal. I mean, we're not counting days, we're counting, you know, if it's the June bill, you have to file it by September bill, right? I mean,
Earlier in the meeting, Charlie indicated that he had a preference for days instead of months.
It eliminates some
So
potential
it could
confusion.
confusion, so I think that's what.
I agree with both.
Right, I think we can do both.
Yeah.
I agree with Sarah as well, and myself.
So it's not after receipt, it's after the date of the bill, correct? That's what Sarah's point is. It's
Right.
not, it needs to take off receipt and just be the date of the bill.
yes.
And should I indicate that the first thing you do water due as well didn't arrive in that fashion? I would, yeah. Anyway, is that all right?
Unless we define receipt.
Well, except that they
Issuance
have,
is fine, right?
they have 6 months and they get a bill every month, so then they have to argue that they haven't gotten the bill in 6 months.
Sure.
So,
I
that's,
don't disagree with you.
that's a little stretching it.
Someone taking notes.
On, I can make a copy of this too, if you want to see it. But on item 4, under the excessive water use, where it says water volume charges may be reduced to the actual, the intention of that is not that you reduce the charge of all the water, you reduce the charge for the excess water. And so, I think we should say volume charges for excess water may be reduced to the actual cost. Because there's a volume of water that's being adjusted, but you're not adjusting their normal usage, and so you're not giving them a break on the water that's not being contested.
So, volume of water in excess of the average?
No,
What
I just
is
say the volume charges for excess water may be reduced to the actual per gallon cost.
We have a definition of excess water already.
This is just a, it's an ordinance. We don't have a definition of any of this stuff in here, this is just a policy.
Right, so I think what Wendy was suggesting, I would also concur with, because it clears up that it's excess, the excess is above the average. So
It's
that's
not that, it's not an average.
So what is it, what is it?
How do you get the excess then if you don't decide what their average water use is and see what's excessive over that?
Well, then you have to define how you determine average.
There's a formula for determining your average water usage and it's on your water bill.
There's no formula for determining average water usage,
Then how do we find out what's excessive? What's excess?
because we look back and see what the,
Average is?
you know, what they have used in the past for those similar months, what the description of the incident was that caused them to have more water used than they would expect to be using.
On average?
It's on average. Just depends on how long you go take that average, maybe 3 months, 6 months, 9
Well,
months.
it's
Just saying excessive, like how do you know
How
how
do
to
you know how to
define that?
calculate that?
There's no, it's probably gonna come back to us for an appeal because then they'll say, I
What
think,
does that mean?
yeah,
whole year, then your water usage that would be
They will-
normal for July would be way lower than what you would normally use in July.
When I moved in, we had a leak right away and had a flood, and I had only lived there 2 days. So I wouldn't have a year before to see what my average was. So, I don't know how we would figure out the excess there.
I think if this was really small numbers, I wouldn't harp on this as much, but I think that since we've had some people who've gotten back more than 5 figures, the water bills last year in appeals that happened, yeah, we had like $14,000 last year that came back in appeals.
Or total, but
Yes.
not one person.
But there was one person who received a significant portion of that. So I would say that, I mean, that y'all have done a lot of work on this, and I walked through a couple of these with Jackie Bob, and I thought I understood it, and I thought I understood it to be the average as well. So I think that we're trying to get this so it's clear for staff to understand how to implement it, and that as a council we understand what we're giving people back, so that we can, I mean, we can look at places where we're losing money on water. And I think one of the things that we addressed was that we realized that the amount that we were giving, like the cost per gallon plus $1 wasn't covering our actual costs, so that was a good, helpful step. I think also understanding what people are gonna be able to classify as excessive usage would be helpful, because that's the part they're getting the discount on. So, I don't wanna discount, I really appreciate the amount of work that's been put in on this, and I want to accept the recommendation of the utility commission, and I wonder if we could just get that clarified.
And they did not have this conversation, so I think it's fair to ask if you want.
I'm happy to work with Jackie Bob on this, and then if we can just going over this for a while, and we can get some more clarification.
Okay. So, we'll have Sarah and JB taking a look at this, and then potentially the utility commission as well. We'll come back. Is that fair assessment?
I would really appreciate that, just because I think there's been a lot of work put in on this topic, trying to understand this particular water loss issue.
Right.
And making sure that we have something that's clear. I think that since I think we're sitting up here and we're not able to fully understand it, and it would be helpful to have something that we can
I
explain.
think the portion I think the work that was put out by the utility commission is good, and I like the amendments made. I think the portion that's missing for me is how Jackie Bob's handling it administratively, like what it looks like there. So if we could have that piece put in, that'd be helpful.
Great.
Thank you, Sarah.
Any other discussion? No additional action? Great. Thanks, council. 7.06, discussion of possible action for review applications and make appointments to Park Commission.
I
We didn't
move-
have
oh.
any, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, we didn't have any new applications come in, but we do have one from last month, where we had more applicants than we had positions. We now have an opening on Park Commission. We have an application pending from last month from Mary Elizabeth Cofer. I don't know that anyone's reached out to Mary Elizabeth to ask her if she is still, okay,
I talked to her because she had not been told that she did not get on proclamation.
is she still interested in
And
it?
so I called to tell her what happened, because I didn't want her showing up thinking, assuming that she thought she would clearly have been appointed because she was the first one to turn in an application, and we had 3 openings, so. I called and talked to her before the last park commission meeting so that she knew, what the situation was, and she applied because she was very interested in
So she remains
participating,
interested.
so I'm pretty sure she would be.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Okay, council, so we have one application for one spot.
You ready for a motion?
I
I move to appoint Mary to, I believe it's position 1 on the park commission.
Second?
Catch me out. Adam? Can we have wiggle room to change that position if position 1 isn't correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes.
To the open position.
To the open position.
To the open position on the park commission. And thank her for continuing to want to serve. And hopefully she does.
Thanks, Wendy. Motion from Wendy and a second from Amy. All in favor, or sorry, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, Ms. Coker, for joining us. We have 7.07, update and discussion on the 2019-2020 budget process.
Quickly, I wanted to let you know that we received a certified roll from the assessor on Monday. We have exceeded $1 billion in valuation, and just to give you a frame of reference, that's more than the city of Cedar Park. So,
Also, no pressure. Decisions that we make up here are impacting over $1 billion worth of appraised value. So, take that to bed.
So that happened sooner than what they had thought. They had given us that date of August 30th, but it is later than the regular July 30th date. And then Travis County turned around and they issued us their information today. So we already have effective and rollback rates in front of us. So that said, we have a tax rate calendar B that would put us setting the tax rate in October, us passing the budget on the very last day of September, because Travis County wouldn't tell us how soon they could turn this information around to us, so we were allowing for 10 days. We could create, we can't revisit tax calendar A because that would have had us having public hearing on the tax rate tonight. So we missed some of those things tonight that we would have had. I could do a tax calendar C, but that might mean having a special meeting toward the beginning of September, so we can maybe meet some of those remaining dates on tax calendar A, if that makes sense. And so I'm not sure if the council has any preferences, if you would like to stay with tax calendar B, or if you would like me to work with the mayor and see about possibly a special meeting.
What we have in our packet is B.
Yes, yes. Wait, hold on. This is A.
Now a good time to note that the 9/5, September 5th meeting, and we will not be able to attend.
Well, that's okay because we're not on schedule to do 9/5 right now. So, because we missed all those items on today that we could have. And maybe we're okay with tax calendar B. The county's gonna be kind of upset with us. They like us to pass our budget before the 30th of September, but there was just no way without knowing how soon they could turn it around back to us. That was the best we could do.
Is what we have in our calendars now as meetings,
That's B.
so what's in our calendars is what we're doing, and this is what we were doing, but we're not doing anymore.
Correct.
So what's in our calendars hasn't changed.
Right, the calendar invites I sent.
And is that a workshop on September 8th, a council meeting on September 18th, or council meeting on September 18th, and then a special meeting on the 30th?
Right.
So after tonight, basically three more.
During the 18th, the 30th, then we'll have this October 2nd, and then October 7th. 2nd and 7th will be to officially set the tax rate.
October 2nd?
Yes.
Got it.
Okay, so the 5th is off, September 5th is off.
Yeah, this is A, within that time frame.
Thank you for sending out the calendar reminders and keeping us so organized, even through this weird transition of not knowing what was gonna happen. Good job. That's excellent. Thank you.
I know, it's important to be on
Yes, calendar. It's very helpful.
I think I'm okay with sticking with it.
Okay. We'll just put that.
I mean, I've had to get extra coverage for those days already, so I feel like that might be tricky to reschedule it
Sure.
for me, but.
It's fine. Let's do it. Good job.
Thanks a lot, Amber. Any additional discussion, council? Please.
That pushes the week of ACM. Is that maybe a problem for these presence at our meetings?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's special meetings and all I envision being on the agenda is the public, what's related to the tax rate.
The new chief will be here as well.
That's true.
Yeah, so
Okay.
he should be there.
Okay, 7.08, standing agenda item. Do we have any updates for the Peak Cave improvement project?
I have no updates on 7.08, but I do on 7.09.
No comments on 7.08, we'll move to 7.09. Update, discussion, possible action, pass resolution request, meeting with, to provide information or statement of position of the city to, and or to request information or analysis from the relevant state and local officials in connection with the proposed South Mopac expansion. I thought you guys were gonna help trim that down.
We did get 708 amended with the 5 lanes thing, as Sarah's called it multiple times.
Yes, and I noticed that and I was concerned.
Amy, would you mind updating us on 7.08?
Sure. My main update is that we had an email prompt from CTRMA asking us about where the resolution might be on the ramp project, and I will own that it dropped a little bit for me because there were a couple of things that happened and I was trying to get information. So one of the things that happened was that there's been a change in chairmanship on the board, and I wanted to make sure I understood what was happening with that dynamic for CTRMA. Another thing that happened is that TxDOT has given the green light to CTRMA to start moving forward on Mopac South as well. So I was trying to understand information about that before we finalized our resolution. So at this point, the schedule that Wendy and I have put together is I'm going to go ahead and try to finish the draft resolution this week. Wendy's going to take a look at it, make further comments, and we'll send it over to Mike as well. I wanted to also just maybe send a first draft over to David Armbruster before we finish it out to see if there's any other comments since he was in that meeting. And then also see if we need to have any legal review and be able to have it in September. For some reason I had September 5th still on our calendar, so it looks like it'll be September 18th now instead of the 5th. But that gives us plenty of time to get it done and make sure that we've gotten any other questions answered that we need to answer.
Has CTRMA reached out to us to give us an update on Mopac South now that it's back on? That would be nice.
We just asked where their resolution is.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple things in play that I want to make sure we understand.
I think we just want to make sure that we are firm in our position, that we continue to have, that we're not, we don't know what the entire project looks like, so make a resolution in support of that, definitely.
Amy, Wendy, appreciate the diligence on behalf of the community. Thank you very much. We will expect a draft resolution as early as September 18th. Great. Thank you. Now, if there's nothing else there, council, I'm going to skip ahead and just note that 10.01, reports in 10.01 through 10.17 are available to the public should they choose. With that, I'm going to call up 8.01 pursuant to the Texas Government Code Section 551.071, consultation with the city attorney regarding the city's compensatory time policy for employees. This is executive session. We are going to wait for the room to clear.
We need to call it both of them.
You can call
We
it.
have to come back.
I'll tell you what, let's call it, I will also call it 8.02 pursuant to the Texas Government Code 551.074, valuation, compensation, and employment contract for the city administrator, Amber Lewis. Yes, ma'am, it is 9:20. Wait for
All right, we're recording.
Okay, we are out of executive session at 10:24. And just to confirm, no action was taken in executive session. We'll call it 9.01, discussion of possible action regarding the city's compensatory time policy for employees. Council, are we planning to take any action? Or is there any discussion regarding this item? No discussion. I will move on to 9.02. Discussion and possible action on the evaluation, compensation, and employment contract for the city administrator, Amber Lewis.
I move to approve the evaluation, compensation, and employment contract of the city administrator, Amber Lewis, as presented, and do I need to qualify it any more than that?
I don't think so. Amber, do you have?
I'll second.
Cool.
If I ask for a friendly amendment though,
Oh, a friendly amendment, I'm sorry, we did want one.
I would like to ask, Amber, could you clarify, on section 3.3, under the paid leaves,
Sure.
it has the city shall provide 2 additional weeks of vacation leave available to be used immediately. That's a one-time within the.
Over the.
Yes,
the
one
term of it?
time, and I could ask Charlie to make sure that that's clear in the contract. Just one time to front load, 2 weeks.
So you're pre-accruing
You just wanted to make that.
Yeah, I just wanted some extra vacation time. We've talked about it with the police officers too, that our vacation time accrues slowly, and so I just wanted.
So would it be fair to say that we would provide 2 additional weeks pre-accrued to be available for use over the term of the contract? Because it would be pre-accrued and then it's available for use over the term, like, just to get clarification?
Yes.
Okay. So my friendly amendment, and we can have Charlie.
You're just front loading it, that's what you're trying to do.
Yes.
Would be the city shall provide 2 additional weeks of vacation pre-accrued to be available for use over the term of the contract.
But she's still getting the accrued that she
And then-
accrued, so
right.
not pre-accrued, but just, she gets 2 additional weeks to be used over the term of the contract, and she still accrues her regular hours.
Okay, so the city shall provide 2 additional weeks of vacation to be available for use over the term of the contract.
That, right. Because then she's still accruing, but an additional 2 weeks. Yes.
Okay. That's my amendment.
I accept your friendly amendment.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion from Wendy and a second from Amy. Amended? Council, is there discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank
Amber,
you.
Happy to have you for an extra year.
So we're not revisiting this next year or the year after.
Or the year after.
Okay.
It's been stated.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Officer, Cecil
Thank
Lynn.
you, bud. He's out.
Sorry.